Okay, so today is going to be episode 5 in my little permadeath bot gauntlet that I'm doing. And so basically, I've gone through the first couple I did were against like these temporary ones that I have kind of moved past because those are the ones that are always at the top that are like the seasonal or monthly ones, like, oh, the boomer guy, the Lee the boomer was the second one. And then the first one I beat was like Madam Murder, I keep calling her, but she was actually Madam something, but she happened to Madam Mate, maybe. But basically that was like for the March murder on the Nile kind of gimmick, whatever. It was all to do with like who killed the green pawn. So all these kind of gimmicks. I can't really do those because I only do it once a week. Maybe at the very end I'll do them after I beat Dinglarian's bot and all these 2800 plus ones. But obviously we'll go through every single one until I lose a game. Obviously, if I draw, we get to still, that counts as a win basically. So if I get to draw a Grandmaster bot, that's fine. Then I not only do I survive, but I also don't have to play it again. So that might be a little bit of a cheese, but it's also fair, especially when you consider like I'm like a 1500-ish player myself. So that is a high bar to raise, but we do get the benefit of correspondence. So we had beaten episode 1, we beat Madam Murder, who's like a 400 bot. Then episode 2, we beat the Boomer, who's like a 4 or 500. Then episodes 3 and 4, we beat Danny Rensch, because I kind of left that one hanging just to see how that would kind of be like. Like, I started the game again, because the point of this is to be super slow and instructive. It's not like I can't beat these in my sleep, at least for now. Then we'll get to some higher rated ones. So people might get annoyed that I'm cherry picking some of the lower rated ones, but that's the whole point, that I do get to choose the order, but it means that I have to get to all of them eventually. So, you know, why skip ahead and do Judith Polgar right now and get my ass beat or whatever. But the one problem that I ran into when testing that, so I did a short episode like 2 weeks ago where I played like an hour, whatever, and I played Danny Rensch, and then I'm like, okay, I'll come back to it. And I wasn't able to come back to it because it's not even like, oh, you need to use premium or some feature like that. I think genuinely it just doesn't work. You can start from a particular position against a bot, but they won't give you that commentary and stuff that it was at least part of the fun of this experience, to whatever extent that's giving you like flavor text and they're talking trash or trying to be nice or whatever personality they have. So that element would be fun to look at, and so you don't get that. So for some of the later ones, like if I'm really playing Judith Polgar and it's going to take multiple episodes, either because, you know, I really got to take my time, and so that time is no factor, right? I'm not trying to prove anything with that. There's no episode limit, so I can take as long as I want. At least that's how I want it to be. I might have to do that one without the commentary of the bots, but I won't worry about that for now. Or I should beat everyone that first that I think I can beat in one episode, and then we unlock the second layer, which is beating ones that are like 2000 plus, but it's going to take me more than one. So that's the two advantages I have. The three advantages that I have: number one is I can choose the order, so I can cherry pick the weakest ones, which of course I'm going to take advantage of and do that now. Number two is I can draw them and still escape, and that counts effectively as a win for my purpose, because again, we're trying to survive. And then number three is that we're able to go multiple episodes, although I haven't done that yet, really. So what I did was I beat Danny Rensch from the position that we had saved from the, you know, from 2 weeks ago last week, but then I beat him again, just for the purity of, like, you know, we get to see the commentary or whatever stupid stuff. So we'll do another low-rated bot today. We're not going in any particular order. It doesn't have to be, like, exactly lowest to highest rated, but you know, effectively we're sort of trying to pick out for some of the weakest ones, and eventually we will have to get premium just to be able to play a lot of them, but thankfully some of the low rated ones are the ones you get to play for free anyway, so it's not really relevant now, right? And what else? I like to do with these little webcam things at the beginning. I did like a little Domino's review of some food, you know, last time, just to play into the whole meme and almost troll with respect to the whole webcam react culture. So I was sort of reviewing Domino's pizza versus Pizza Hut or whatever, right? Some stupid thing like that. So the same thing here, like this is some rum chata lemon thing. Make me seem like an alcoholic because I did one of these before, like one of the Baileys. But I don't even really like them. It's just like whatever. Once in a while, I'll get one, and it's just the Bailey's is still sitting there actually in my fridge. Yeah, this is some lemon flavored rum chata. It's like a cream rum. Let's do like our movie critic self, where we give it like a full thorough review. I had like a little sip of it too, and actually my teeth are hurting, so I can't even have too much of anything with sugar right now. But it's got like a good, you know, sweet flavor. Let's see, how would we really describe it? It's not bad. A lot of liquor is meant to mix it anyway, but actually you're not meant to drink it straight, but it's not too bad. It's only like what percent alcohol? Only 14%, so you can't really taste it, but you can't really give it that much credit for, you know, for that when it is so low. If it's like 40% and then you can't taste it, then it's impressive. Yeah, I'd give it maybe like a 4-star. It's pretty good. It's not like overly sweet. You can definitely get the lemon flavor in it. You know, sometimes it'll be so light, or again, the alcohol will overshadow it, which in this case it doesn't. Look how little I'm having too. I just a drip. But yeah, I don't know, like what other sort of tasting notes would you give? What is the aroma? That's always a good way to try it out first at the beginning. But no, I do this almost just to troll. Like every time I use the webcam, which is really mainly only for chess, I'll do some kind of like little food review or some, because I can show stuff, right? Otherwise I never do face cam. So I may as well do something like that where I review some food, some different fast food or something I haven't tried, or some some drink or something that I've never had before. Yeah, it's pretty good, fruity, kind of tropical thing. I'm sure you could mix it with a lot of stuff. So it's a pretty good thing, 4-star. It almost would make it seem like, oh, I'm sponsored by this to some extent. But I'm not, for multiple reasons. Number one is, you know, I don't even drink, so why would I take that sponsorship even if they gave it to me? Number two is I'm a small clown streamer who averages like 5 viewers, so why would anybody want to sponsor me? And then number three is I would never even take probably any, because I wouldn't want it to taint my objectivity. Like even with Pizza Hut, like, oh, I like Pizza Hut, so I would take one from them. But then it makes it feel like it taints that. Like even though I genuinely do like Pizza Hut, right, and I always have, then when you take a sponsorship, people say, oh, you're only saying that because you took it, not because you always felt that way in the first place. So even if I do feel that way, I still wouldn't want to do that because I want to be able to say it without any sort of incentive behind it. But no, it's just like a little troll gimmick thing that I'm doing. Now, this position we have here is about how one of the games ended. It wasn't the second one. I think it was the first one. Or wait, no, it must have been the second one because it must have been the second one because I would have been keeping up with it. So this is part of the reason why we're doing this sort of correspondence style. Well, it just sort of suits with the correspondence style that you're able to do with the bots. But that is a real shame that you can't do that feature with respect to continuing the games over. You can, but not with the commentary, which is kind of stupid. And again, if you might think you should be able to quit the game like with a regular correspondence game, like against a player, log out and then come back and continue it. That's the whole point of correspondence, right? You don't have to do it all in one sitting. But for some reason, it wouldn't do that. And again, that doesn't seem to be a premium feature. I looked it up, so that's the one limitation of this, that we're not going to actually be able to. And speaking of ads, we'd have to fucking deal with these things too, to whatever extent. I don't want to worry about premium and stuff right now. But the point is that you ultimately have a position, and I wouldn't show up on the directory or anything anyway, not even because, again, I'm a small streamer, but because this isn't even like my real account or main account, because that one's deleted and I don't even have it. But you know, every time we would do some sort of permadeath challenge and we would fail and have to delete the account. So the same thing is actually true here, but I mean, I guess this account is already just whatever. I guess I will delete it, but this is just like a backup account for challenges and stuff like this, so I'm not allowed to actually try to ladder or play rated games or anything like that. I just do kind of variants like Chaturanga, as the name would suggest, even though I'm always lying because I'm doing stuff other than that. But I guess in that context it can be rated. We actually beat Nightmare last time, which is a little bit surprising. I think we beat him on time, or he always makes some excuse like, oh, he's cooking something or distracted or doing something. Like almost like I'm distracted, I'm streaming, but I never use that as an excuse. In fact, I like to encourage snipers, like how Joe DeVola would say that. I like to encourage intruders. I like to encourage snipers because anything I can think of, they should think of anyway, and then I should still be able to beat them after that. Right, so whatever I'm saying shouldn't help them too much, but at the very least it'll help them on time. Or imagine if somehow all the bots were listening and they'll have sort of adaptive AI to me. So Danny Rensch was sort of a Smurf, an even bigger Smurf than me, because he's actually an IM. Right, but he's role-playing as a 400 rated player, the same way that I'm a 1500 role-playing as like a 1200, as this rating would suggest. But whatever, like that was the first one that was actually like a real person that technically, that's not really their final form, but whatever, like that was a little bit too easy. He actually played the opening pretty well in the second game though, all things considered. But yeah, I can't analyze them. I mean, I could recreate the position and the moves and just analyze it as a raw game, but those are a few things I haven't done. I haven't analyzed it. I haven't been able to continue it into a second episode just because it's kind of inconvenient the way that works. But this was kind of a cool mating position for the final one. I might have knocked over a few pieces, so it might not be 100% the same. But this is a really cool sort of sack play where we move the queen here right in his grill, right? And you might think, why can we do this? this is maybe something I wouldn't see in a rapid game, or I might not get this kind of position exactly against an equal rated opponent in a rapid game. But I didn't even castle, I don't think, right, the whole game. So I was the aggressor because he was making so many mistakes. So why is this such a cool mate? Let's say my queen was somewhere over wherever, right? And then we just go into here after deep level of calculation that I can do because it is correspondence. And this is, again, this is my attempt to make it as instructive as possible, not just for other people. I guess I'm starting to realize, like, you know, how low the standard is. There are people even worse than me. So, like, what excuse do they have if I'm such a clown? You know, you should be better than me at least. But it's instructive in that sense, but it's also just instructive for me. Like, I should be learning how to play more so the right way. So this is my alternative to studying. Like, I don't really want to study and I find it boring and I hate it. So this is what you get instead. Sort of a slow, instructive, brooding format like this that kind of is similar to studying, but it's not exactly the same. And so, again, why can you put the queen there so brazenly in what seems like a sack play? Because if he simply takes it, then I simply move up with the rook and it's made. Because if he moves his rook back, what happens? I can just take it, right? It's not going to have a cover because his king is one square away. So, like, you can kind of mime the moves, I guess, here. Not in the course of a game, though, because then that's like cheating. Both the touch move rule, you can't touch something you're not moving, and even though GMs and stuff break that all the goddamn time. And then also is a case where you're not able to do that because you can't see some other hypothetical position, because that's the whole point of calculation. So if he takes it with the rook, I simply go with my rook and mate him, because if he blocks with the rook again, I can just take it. And then the other point is, what else? Like, anywhere he goes on the back rank is also a moot point, right? Wherever he goes with that rook is not going to save him. Why? Like, this was a really cool, unique mating position, and this is the kind of stuff that can happen. Maybe I've had opportunities like this in other games, but I would never see them because I'm so panicked on time. Or maybe in a classical game I might see it, but I'm still not really the aggressor. I'm very, very defensive-minded. Hey, Nightmare, how's it going? You're working right now? Can't stay? Oh, that's okay. Yeah, wouldn't want to catch you playing chess at work, watching or playing it. The Stars always does that at school, like he's trying to play a game of chess on his phone. It's like, chess is good for you. It's you know, it's a good learning tool, so the teacher shouldn't be upset about it. But no, the whole fun thing here is, yeah, anywhere he moves on the back rank with the rook is moot. Why? Because let's say he moves to a1, right? I bring the rook, I check, and it's basically mate. So he takes with the rook, but then I take with the queen. So this is such a beautiful, aesthetic, amazing mate that you might think, oh, it's only possible because he's a 400 rated player. But just to throw the queen to the wind like that is such a beautiful thing. Like how many people would see that move? I didn't see that move at all for a few minutes. Like, I was sitting there probably thinking about it, right? And I would never even consider it. But that is such a rare, sort of weird position to be in, where you just put the queen there. Again, the king is one square out, so it can't do anything. All right, the king isn't covering, so you're going to get mated no matter what you do in 2 moves. You take the queen, I check, then you block, then I take and mate. Anywhere you move the rook, it's going to be mate. Anything else you do, it's going to be mate. Let's say you can't move the king in. I guess you could maybe move a pawn, right? And that might delay the inevitable. Like, let's think about this hypothetical. This is just how the last game ended against the bot. So I'm trying to make it like it's super, like it's kind of a big deal. Like, each of these is like a boss battle, and this is like an episode of a show or something where you're like going against a new, it's like Yu-Gi-Oh, the chess version. Like, you're going up against a new opponent every time, and it's like a super big deal. And if I lose, I actually die, like in real life, which of course is not true. But I'm just saying, like, we have to delete the account, and like we're sort of getting immersed in that element. So it's like we're looking at it like every single thing is a very big deal, and that level of immersion is very important if you want to try to be good at something, basically. So what you can do here is, let's think about hypothetically what we would have done here. You can't give a check now, or you can take and check. And see, here's where I often get lazy, because it's like, you know, you don't have to find the best move. This is a lot of time what happens with mates. Like, oh, haha, you missed mate. Also, you're up a queen, so it doesn't matter, or whatever, right? Like, it's a bad habit to get into. Like, you're not always looking for the best move, but you can get away with it. So why would you worry about it, you know? But this is at least a good opportunity to potentially do that. So what you have here is the simple ability. Okay, you could take it and give a check. You could move the rook down to the file, right? To the first row, right? And then he can't take it. He can't take the queen, because if he takes the queen, then he's in check. So now what would that allow me to do, though? like thinking about like what would be the quickest mate here, it's possible that, I mean, you have to resolve the rook situation though, because I guess what you could do is, this would be my guess of what the best move is. You go here, right? Sit at the chessboard and play with yourself. The best way to learn, Magnus Carlsen quote. You can't take the queen. The best you could do is take the rook. So if you take the rook, I take and give a check. And then it's just going to stall the game out a little bit because you're going to be able to, you can check on the one square. This doesn't seem like really the best one. See, I'm already kind of doing it wrong where I might be, like, let's just see how this would progress. Basically, these two are gone then. And then this one would be here, then you go there. Now you could easily take that rook with the queen, and it's obviously over because I have a rook and a bishop and he has nothing, right? But if you were trying to do it optimally, you could give a check like there, but then what exactly does that do? See, it's still not super clear. Like, what is the mate here? I don't even get it. So by simply moving the pawn, which I guess I didn't think of last time or whatever, I just assumed it would have been over. In fact, I even said that with certainty, that like it was over. And I doubt a 400 bot would make the right move there, or they might make it by sheer accident, obviously. But that was kind of strange. So it actually wasn't as much of a sure thing. I mean, it is a sure thing that you're going to win, but that was such an awesome kind of move, just to put the queen there. I mean, now, I guess at this point you don't have to worry about it too much, but pretend like we've had a few moments like that happen in games too over the years. Like, you have one move to take advantage of some mistake they made or something, right? Like, you're losing and they make one mistake that gives you an opportunity. So if you miss that one move, this is like what puzzles should be about, but a lot of the time they're not. Like, you're up by so much anyway, it doesn't feel like it matters, right? But that you have one move, and if you miss that one move, then you lose. But if you catch that one move, then you at least have a chance to win, or you actually do win, right? Those are the kind of instructive puzzle type moments. So unfortunately, you know, as you look at this, it's not super obvious to me what the best move there would have been, actually. Because now it's not going to be made. You could promote a pawn. Like, it's hard for me to take these kind of positions seriously, but this is exactly part of at least what I'm trying to teach myself, is the ability to... and actually it would have probably been better if the white king goes outside, because now at least the rook can move to whatever extent that's relevant. But actually I'm completely stumped by that position, actually, because I thought, I don't know, somehow I thought that was different. I thought it was a guaranteed mate by putting the queen there, which it is a pretty badass move, right? But you could just move the pawn, and I didn't even consider that. Let's go ahead and reset the board and actually play a proper game. And of course, again, during the course of a game, even though it is only against the bot, and even though it is in correspondence, so you might think the rules might be a bit more lax there, I technically am going to treat it the same way, like it's cheating to do any of those other things, like to move the board or to look at it in some other transposition or hypothetical thing. And so basically, oh, I was going to say, where's the queen? Yeah, this is perfectly fine. Yeah, this is taking it like to an extreme to try to get immersed in what you're doing, and it is an important element of the game. Like I always say with... that's more important. Like, anybody could just study the game, but then what's the hardest part is you get bored of it, and then you don't want to play anymore, and you get sick of it, right? Burnt out, which even happens to the best players like Magnus and stuff, but that's after obviously an extremely long time. And I like how every great player comes to the same conclusion, like, or I should actually wait to see whether I'm going to be white or black, but I guess I'll still play it like this, although... well, let's just hope I'm black, because it kind of makes... well, it doesn't matter, actually, for the stream purpose, because you can see it either way, right? Like, for you, it's just horizontal, so it's just one side or the other. It doesn't matter. But for me, I'm facing black. Like, I'm closer to black, and white's on the other side. So, like, of the table that's farther away from me, so it's a little uncomfortable, but you should get used to seeing these positions in inverse, although you never really have to do that. But really, you should get used to seeing it in your head, because that's what all the good players do. And I always found it funny, like, Riv was like a 2,000 plus player who's, you know, he always would complain about, oh, why are you using that piece set, like some symmetrical piece set or something. But it's like, you're so good that aren't you seeing the pieces in your head anyway? So why would you even care about what set it is? But play bots with various strengths and styles, use optional coaching features for insight, practice at any time. And yeah, that Danny sort of broke the code of no advice, because I chose the setting, no help of any kind, right? But he still gave me help because he's like a coach Danny. That's the whole point of what his commentary is supposed to be. So yeah, we started off by beating the boomer. right? And then we get to, and that was just kind of by mistake because I didn't know how quickly they change and stuff like that. We were kind of going in order here for the purposes of, yeah, Coach Danny, we had beaten him. I haven't been this disappointed in a Danny since The Shining, or whatever. Insert Danny joke here. But, or who's that? Danny Masterson. That would be the better one. I haven't been this disappointed in a Danny since that guy from That 70s Show. Once you've learned the basics with Danny, you're ready for more challenge with me. Now, I could do this one, even though it is only an 800 bot, but let's totally take the piss and say we're cherry picking for some of the lowest ones. Jimmy wants to make sure you enjoy the game. Jimmy will adapt to make it a little easier, or Jimmy will make it harder, depending on how you play Jimmy. The old Seinfeld, you could make a joke on that. Martin, I kind of want to save for a special occasion. I don't know what I'm supposed to gather from this. Like, I don't have to go exactly in order, really. But no, I don't like being under the time pressure that, like, oh, I have to do it in the course of one single episode. Once you've learned the basics. I mean, I guess I could do it. So in that sense, I'm de facto going in order, even though we're obviously going to skip these. Even if I did have premium, I wouldn't do them because, you know, why would I? I don't know, man. It's not like I'm afraid of an 800, but this is supposed to be more. I'm not ready for that yet. Like, it's supposed to be more slow pace. So why? I don't know. Jimmy, do we do the Jimmy? I don't know, I just feel like I'm not in the mood, or I would have to take longer to do this. It's been taking me like 2 hours plus. I'll do it, but... So, challenge, no help of any kind. We play as random. This is always a criteria that we use. We're doing Coach Mae after beating Danny Rensch, and I don't know actually who this is, if this is a real person. Are they better than Danny Rensch in real life, or is she just not smurfing quite as hard? Right, like, is she actually an IM as well? Random, challenge, here we go. I get to play as white. Hello there, play any move at all. This game is just for practice. Actually, it's not. This is the highest stakes game that you've ever seen. So as usual, I'm one opening Andy, where I go the little king's pawn opening. We're going to come to find out my position is somehow wrong. Like, like I set up the board incorrectly because I don't even know that. So let's sort of see what sort of entertaining personality she has, though, in doing this. But no, I'm one opening Andy. Now I'll go knight to f3, then I'll go bishop to c4, the explosive bishop move. Best by test. The world champion Bobby Fischer would say, e5, I can't let you get that center easily. And actually the reason why I always move e5 is simply because I like to do the king's Indian, although I guess best by test isn't accurate anymore, right? This wouldn't be probably the best anymore. That was before opening theory ruined the game, even according to Bobby Fischer. Yeah, let's quote Bobby Fischer accurately. Openings suck and they ruin chess. Therefore, chess sucks. Period. End of story. He said it, not me. And also, knights suck. And bishops are objectively better. Even if I'm extrapolating on that one, maybe a little bit. But no, the reason why I do this is because the knight needs a certain carry, right? The knight, I would normally go like the king's Indian, so I go knight to f6, right? But you can't do it because, oh, if they put the pawn there, right? Like, I hate playing against my own opening that I use, I guess, right? So if I'm playing myself, hypothetically, let's say, right, I would do the king's pawn as white, but then I wouldn't do the king's Indian as black because you can't do it. You go e5 to block it from threatening the knight. So even she's saying it incorrectly, or at least from my perspective. I'm not doing that to, oh, take the center. An 800 player and a 1200 player doesn't give a shit about the center. You might say, oh, that's why they're 800, but it's not that important. Nobody's really thinking about that. Nobody really cares, right? But what you're actually doing is, okay, the knight's going to get threatened by that, and I have to develop the knight, and it's a liability of a piece, so I have no choice but to do that, right? That's the point. So, of course, I'm looking at this in the opposite way, but it's not a big deal. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. So again, you take the initiative as white to simply do kind of the same thing. Like I said, I'll go knight to f3, attack the pawn, force them to react. The one thing I'm really worried about in that case is the pin. See, this pin is a devastating, deadly thing to do, and the reason why is because it's not objectively bad as per the engine, but you're also not the engine, and you're not going to know how to play it. So the bishop goes there, then you push a pawn, then then they go back, they're still pinning, then you push the pawn again, so now you end up with a pawn on h3, g4, and f2. Whatever the fucked up pawn structure that is technically not losing. It's not bad according to the engine, right? I've looked at that 100 times, but I can never rationalize playing like that because that's such an uncomfortable pawn structure. So this is the perfect beginner's sort of beginner's understanding that, like, just because something's objectively good or bad, you can't really worry about that or think like that because it's different when you're actually doing it, right? Like, who is going to be comfortable with that pawn structure and who is going to want to play like that? Now, the one failsafe you have here technically is the simple fact that, okay, let's say hypothetically you got pinned. We're getting kind of ahead of ourselves, and it's not necessarily going to happen. But let's say I go knight f3, then they go d6, and then whatever I do, right? Then they pin it down, right? They pin it down with the bishop by moving the bishop to g4, right? They move the bishop to g4 and they're pinning it. The one thing you have here is the failsafe that the bishop can come up behind and cover it, right? So the bishop can go to e2, right? Bishop goes to e2, and now it's perfectly fine because now if he takes, I take with the bishop, and the most important thing is you can move the queen away wherever you want, and not only is it no longer pinned, or I guess that, you know, the bishop is blocking the pin, but not only is it not pinned, but you don't have to worry about the main weakness of that. The knight goes there and it gets pinned by the bishop. Now, if the bishop can't go there, let's say the bishop's outside the pawns, right? Like, let's say we go, I move the bishop outside to c4, then I raise d3, right? So now that's technically a correct, good position to be in because you want this pawn to be covered, you want the bishop to be outside the pawns. That makes sense, right, technically. But the problem is, now if you're in that position, the bishop's on c4, the pawn's there, now his bishop comes and pins the knight here, right, sitting there. And so now what happens is, you're pinned to the queen. You have no other way of covering that knight except for the knight for knight cover here by bringing the other knight to like d2, which is a very incorrect position, and I've been punished on that a lot. You're not supposed to put the knight there. Just don't do it. I don't know. I can't even explain why, but it's just not a good position. You don't want to end up like that. Fuck it. But that would be the only way to cover it. So pretend that knight's not even there. How else do you cover that knight? This is what kind of triggers me so much, right? So again, we have the bishop on c4. We have the pawn on d3. We have the knight on f3. We have their bishop on g4. So assuming you're not going to do the double pawn push to try to, you know, push it out and make him go back, and that's stupid, right? Let's say you don't want to play with that structure. You have no other options or reserves. This is why the knight is such a triggering, objectively flawed piece. You're not even trying to do anything other than get it off the back range just to castle. But look at the headache that it causes you. You're not supposed to put it typically on e2, right? E2 and d2, for whatever reason, are generally not considered good knight positions as far as I've ever seen, at least. Right? Whenever I've done them, I get punished, or whenever I look at it in the engine, it never tells you to do that, right? So assuming those two squares are just not good, you do want to put it on f3. That is the correct move. But look at the level of lengths you have to go to acquiesce to it. It makes more sense from black's perspective, like, okay, you're trying to go to g6, but you can't go to g6 because they went to e4. So now you have to block e5 by putting your pawn on e5 so that the pawn can't come up and then threaten the knight and then push it out, where it would have to move back and then undevelop and redo the whole thing. So you have to acquiesce to the knight by pushing the pawn. Then you also have to acquiesce to the knight by moving like this pawn, thereby stopping the pin, because that would cause a problem too. Right, and you further have to acquiesce to the knight if you're going to do it here, where you're going to look at, okay, I go to f3, we have that same position. This is a good kind of test at trying to visualize the position too, because I'm not actually moving anything, like I said, because that would be cheating. There's no rule against arrows. This is the real life arrows where you're just pointing like a clown that I am. But you pin that down and you don't want to push it out with the pawns because you don't want to mess up your pawn structure, right? And you also don't want to do the knight covers knight, pretend the knight's already gone or traded or somewhere else, right, out of that position, and pretend like just it's not a good place to put it to knight covers knight. So the bishop is outside. So just consider this position for a second, because this is a major problem for a lot of players, including myself. The knight's here on f3, and it's pinned by the bishop. Now, no other piece can cover it, right? The bishop's outside the pawn, so he can't come back in. So you would have to castle, bring the rook from f1 to e1, then go up to e3 and cover it like that. Then I could move the queen away because it's no longer pinned. Then if he takes, I take with the rook and everything is fine. What kind of an awkward bullshit sequence of moves is that? They're just to cover the knight. And that's unironically the only other way to cover it. The only other thing that'll happen is if you want to unpin the queen, which again, there could be all kind of double attacks that make you want to do that. You don't want to leave the queen pinned. Then what happens is you move the queen away and it's like, oh, you don't lose any material. It's still a trade. And in fact, in my book, an advantageous trade because, you know, knights suck and bishops are good. So it's good that he's giving up a bishop for a knight. But the problem is that what happens is you double stack your pawn and you open the king because you have no other way to take it. So you see what a clown position this actually is, where it's so frustrating to deal with. So again, you don't stop the pin, then you get punished. If you do stop the pin, that's fine. You move the pawn there. You don't want to double push the pawns like h3, g4 because it's an awkward, confusing position that you should probably learn. But you don't want to bring the knight to e2, d2, whatever, because it's just apparently not good for whatever reason. You want to keep the bishop outside the pawns, but then it can't come back to cover. There is no other way to cover that knight, so then you open the king. Like, there's a million problems posed by the knight that, like, maybe I'll come to find out that the majority of opening theory is just how do you stop the knight from being a liability in the opening? Because that's actually objectively true on the most basic level. If nothing else, the knight is a major liability in the opening in a way that other pieces aren't. Like, the bishop, again, you're not trying to do anything with it. You're just trying to get it out of the way, and it's easy enough to do that, right? There's so many things you can do with it, and it's fine, right? You're not trying to attack them. You're not trying to do anything crazy, right? You're just simply trying to get it out of the way and develop. And so it's like you save the best for last, which means, well, that's why you move the knight first before any other piece. And yes, he can. This was even a line that I think Danny Rensch used in one of these bot games, or it must have been the second one, or it might have been the first one, because that first episode we did it. You know, last episode we beat him twice just because we don't like him, or we're BMing a bot. I don't know, but because we didn't get to see the commentary at the end of the other one because I had to continue from that position. Right, but what we have here is what you do is that you he said something like, you know, oh, the knight doesn't need any help to try to develop, right? Unlike all the other pieces, it can just move on its own. Wow, he's kind of praising it, like you can just jump over your pawn, so that's why it's the quickest, easiest one to develop. But you're not accounting for the truths of, oh, you have to acquiesce so that the pawn doesn't push it out, and you have to acquiesce so that, oh, it doesn't get pinned and doesn't open your king and cause all these other problems. So technically, you do have to acquiesce to it a lot, despite the fact that it can jump over stuff, so, right, that doesn't necessarily make it that much easier to develop. So now here we're going to see, this is what it is. This is the long form nature of chess. This is what chess is about, right? Like, it's not about bullet, flashy, blitz. No, this is what chess players do. They sit here and sit at a table on a board and play with themselves and mate themselves. Like, this is what they do. This is how you have to learn and study. Like, this sort of de-romanticizes and demystifies and you know, takes away the glamour of chess. Like, it's not what people make it out to be. It's not an innate measure of intelligence. You can look at Albert Einstein's games and see, oh, he was only a 1200 player. He was playing at a 1200 rate, maybe because he didn't study or he didn't care that much. But it's not an innate measure of anything. Like, it's just, so, like, this is what it is for me. Like, I'm not even saying, oh, I'm that smart or I'm that good or anything. It's like, this is what it would take to do. You'd have to do these kind of things for a long period of time. You'd have to study. You'd have to read books. Right, so anybody can do that, and then it's less impressive because it's like, well, you know, if they studied as much as you, sure, there's a gradation at the highest level, but you won't even know that. Like, you know, you study for a couple years, you get to 2000, now the real game begins, right? Instead of this bottom feeder mentality that, like, oh, you know, you're better than most people, you're top 1% in the world, but anybody who takes the game seriously and plays it regularly would reasonably be able to do that. Not because it's easy, but it's like, that just shows you take it seriously, more seriously than just treating it as a game. So we'll go to f3, knight to f3. And so that's the only thing I don't like about it, is just there's this mentality that it's about something else. So again, I'm just like, this is like the Truman Show of chess, like I say, where it's just, this will show you what the everyman, the ordinary person would go through with chess. Like, this is just the ordinary way of playing the game and treating it, and like, that's it. So you don't have to be anything special, but this is what it would take. Let's say you became a grandmaster like this, or let's say you became a something. It would take years of repetition and study and focus and commitment in a way that I can, on one hand, respect, but in another way I can kind of clown it, because then we're not that impressed by, oh, look at you, you're 1800, 2000, and you're better than most people, just because you've studied for years and they haven't, just because you've read books and they haven't. Like, what is the real measure of that? So we'll go ahead and go to f3. How should I defend my pawn? Knight c6 is a good direct way of supporting my pawn on e5. Okay, that is not a bad thing to do. The one sequence that's a little bit confusing sometimes is, okay, let's say they went, oh, I'm touching the wrong thing. I'm touch moving for them. I guess that means they forfeit. Haha. Or yeah, I want to see like a grandmaster who has some sort of physical disability in a good way. Like he's so good that somebody else has to move for him, right? Because he physically can't move the pieces or something, but he's still so good that he's, that'd be an interesting thing to see. Like, has that ever happened, or is that something that could happen? Would that be allowed, that somebody else gets to sort of move and transcribe the pieces for you, if for whatever reason, you get in an accident or something, but you're still really good at the game. So what you have here is, like, let's suppose hypothetically they went knight to f6. If they went knight to f6, what happens is, white gets the initiative, but that's a very confusing sequence of moves. Like, I always hesitate to do it because it often doesn't work out, especially doesn't work out as black, which is why you shouldn't even do it. But like, okay, their knight's on f6, then I take their pawn on e5, then they take my pawn on e4, right? Then you like pin it down, or you like cover it with the queen, so you move the queen to like e2, then they move their queen to e2, but then it doesn't work, because if they move their queen to e2, no, I guess, yeah, it doesn't work, because then I can just take theirs and cover mine in the foul swoop, right? So everything's happening the same way, so you might think, oh, it should be even, but this is the objective advantage that the white always has. Because you're one move ahead, I'm attacking his knight on here with the queen, and then in the act of taking it, I'm also covering mine, so they can no longer take mine back. So that's a bad sequence of moves for black. It might be good for white, but they always do something when I've done it as white. Like, let's think. What else could they possibly do? Like, okay, they're on f6, and then I take, they take, right? And so I'm white. We both took a pawn. Then I put the queen there covering mine. And then what did they do? They just move theirs back, but they can't. They can't afford to do that probably, because if they move theirs back, right? If they move their knight back somewhere, like from e4 to f6, now what happens is I have an unleashed check capability. So like I could go with mine, I could go to like what is that, c6, and then I'm gonna take the queen. So they can't do that either. So what do? They cover it with like a pawn, maybe. So I bring the queen to cover mine, so I'm on e2 with the queen. The knights are in line on e4, e5, but mine is on mine is on their side. Theirs is on my side, and so now they cover it with a pawn. So they say, okay, we'll go to like d6. Now what happens? I'll move the thing and try to unleash, but now they're not in check. So that kind of solves the problem, right? So in that hypothetical line and scenario, all you would have to do is cover the knight with a pawn, because now I'll move my knight. Well, I guess it still doesn't entirely work, though, because if you do that, you cover the knight with a pawn, but then I move my knight, and then whatever happens with mine, like let's say I move it back to c3, now you're pinned to the king, and you're one move away from me pushing the pawn. So you cover it, then I move my knight, right? I move my knight away. Then you could cover it again, like with the queen. Put your queen like on c2, or not c2. Man, I really can't do notation. On e2, right? And when you put the queen on e2, now if you push the pawn to attack, so you push the pawn to like d4 to attack the knight, now it's not pinned, so you go back to like c6 or whatever, right? Now the worst that happens is the queen gets taken and traded, and so everything is fine. So after all that, and it's even covered potentially by that very same knight. Or wait a second, it wouldn't be like that though. It would be, their knight would be on, wait, that doesn't even make sense. Their knight would be on e4, not on e5. So it would be on their side, so they wouldn't be able to push a pawn. They'd have to double push a pawn, like they would have to put it on like d5, right? So if they put it on d5, they cover the knight. Then I set up to try to so if I attack it out at that point when it's on, you got pawn on d5, knight on e4. Now if you push it out with the pawn, yeah, why can't you do that, I wonder? So again, the queen is on e2, right? So let's think about the sequence. I would take on okay, so we exchange. I take on e5, they take on e4. This is the knight sort of exchange for the pawns, where you, instead of trying to cover the knight, you instead are trying to attack their pawn instead, right? So what happens is, okay, they take the pawn, I take the pawn, right? So the knights are in the middle there. So my knight is on e5, their knight is on e4. Then it's my move, right? Because I took the pawn first. So now I put the queen there, but I'm not pinning the knight. And I'm not pinning the knight because my knight is in the way. So now they'll cover their knight. They'll cover their knight on... they could also threaten my knight, and maybe that would solve sort of the problem too. But they could attack... They could cover their knight on whatever square that is, right? On, like, let's say they move the pawn to, like, d5, and then they cover the knight. Now if I push it out with a pawn... Now if I push it out with a pawn, right, I move a pawn to, like, what would it be, like d3 to push it out. Then if they move back with the knight, you might say, oh, you should have like a visual aid for this, or I should actually be moving it. But that's the whole point. We're trying to learn to do that without that. That's how you would have to do it actually in the course of a classical game. This is like literally me sitting in an over the board tournament in real life in a classical setting, and this is what you would have to do and have the patience to do. So if nothing else, that's what it's teaching you, is just patience. So again, if you push that knight out with the pawn, he can't move it. I don't know. I almost feel like that would still work. Because now, okay, his knight's there. It's covered by the pawn. But you push the pawn. So maybe the answer is actually they just threaten my knight with the pawn and try to do the same thing. But see, you're pushing out the knight with the pawn. Then if he moves the knight, right, then I could do some sort of unleashed thing, because now he's pinned to the king or whatever with my own knight, and he has nothing in the way, so I could just easily do some crazy unleash. But anyway, this isn't even what's happening. That's a line that often confuses me, and I never try to do it. Even as white, you know, I wouldn't try. Let's say they did f6, I wouldn't try to take it because I just don't trust it. Here's a good, and knight c6 is a great way of supporting my pawn on e5. How should I defend my pawn? So what would I naturally do here? Since they're just defending their own pawn and not attacking mine, really, I don't even have to worry about that, so I can get a step ahead on development and just simply move the light square bishop. So I was trying to use like a process of elimination style where I could say, you know, what pieces are relevant here. There's nothing else you would want to move aside from maybe the other knight. You could move the knight to c6, or god damn it, to c3, or you could move the bishop to c4. There's no real clear logical razor as to why, but I guess just to get the bishop involved, you have like some sort of cheeky fried liver maybe possibility. You put the knight here, you try to attack there. But more to the point, with the help of the bishop, more to the point, since this piece isn't being attacked, right? Since he declined to attack the knight, I don't even have to worry about covering it. And so therefore, I don't have any urgency to move the knight. So that's the way I could maybe justify it. But doing knight c6, c3, goddammit, c3 here should be a perfectly valid move, right? There should be no reason why that's a bad thing to do. And so we go to c4 right there. And so everything is fine with that. But no, if I happen to mess up and lose to one of these bots, you seem ready to do battle in the Italian game. Considering I don't even know what that is, or, you know it by name. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But I do end up playing that one a lot, actually. That was one of my most commonly seen ones, and I only know that because of chess.com telling you, like on the side it'll say what opening this is. I would often play the Ghiaccio piano, however you even say it. Was played by the best players from the 1500s all the way to today. Is it really still played by the best players today? I feel like it must be outdated. It's like she's calling me a boomer. You play like the old boomers who before chess theory even existed, and maybe that's the natural thing you would come to because, you know, you don't have theory because I don't study. Not that you don't have it, you choose not to use it. So their move is a simple dark square bishop development, sort of mirroring back his black, as we all, common conventional wisdom would say. So now you could make, okay, let me think. This bishop goes to c5, right? So that's just a basic developing move that's not posing any sort of meaningful threat in any way that you have to worry about. So there's nothing really about their move that you have to, there's going to be reactive moves and proactive moves and just developing moves. This is just another developing move because there's no need to worry about anything else. Now, one thing that bothers me sometimes is, so here I might just be thinking to castle because he's still not threatening that pawn, right? So if he goes knight to f6, then I have to worry about that, and then I'll have to go knight to c3. So, black becomes the aggressor then, and I have to play reactively and cover my piece. So maybe I should be a step ahead of the curve, or maybe I should raise that pawn. But whatever I decide to do, see, there's all these considerations to have too. Like, oh, I want to raise the a2 pawn to a3. That way the bishop can go back. That way, if he brings the knight like to a5, then it's awkward because if I go back to b3, then he takes it and it messes up my pawns, and I also don't want him to trap it in there for the take, even though it's a trade. And then I also don't necessarily want to go back to e2 because then, you want to be outside of the pawns, as in you're going to close off the structure by going d3 probably, right, with that pawn. So you don't want to go back inside, and then sure, you're sidestepping the knight, but you're also kind of wasting time and just moving stuff back and forth. So here you kind of resign yourself, I guess, to that fact that he could go knight to a5 and take it, even if on b3 instead of here. You just kind of accept that, and some of these double stacks are actually okay to allow to happen. And I guess the point is, what you could technically do, even though it probably doesn't seem right, is if he goes to, I guess I can use the arrows. I was kind of doing that before. What happens is if you go, right, he goes here, then it's like, oh yeah, I get to take a free pawn. But given the knight's tendency to fuck everything up, especially in the opening, that actually isn't going to happen because yes, you're still covering it. Well, no, I guess it is worth it because you might think, oh, now he'll take the bishop and I could take back with the knight. But if he doesn't, and if he does anything else, right, so it's not the operative thing that, oh, you're taking the free pawn because he gave up the cover with the knight. The only reason why this works is because you're also covering the bishop. If you weren't doing that, then you'd be just hanging the bishop and you couldn't take the pawn, right? So technically you could get away with doing what he's doing there. But the point is that you do this with the knight, that no matter what he does, except for taking the bishop, if you bring like the queen there or something, you could actually do the fried liver situation where you're double attacking that. And so none of that is really relevant. A lot of this is just hypothetical lines that we're just thinking about if given the opportunity. And why think about the same position a million times until you figure it out when you could just study it instead? But I don't know, that's not really a knock against the game, right? Because you could study like any game, but I just resent the idea that people do it at such a low level. People reading books and they're as bad as me. Like, what does that say about you, dude? Let's see. We have, yeah, you're gonna burn calories by using your brain so much, as Al would say from Death Note. Like, he's talking shit to Misa, like, he eats all these sweets, so she's saying, oh, I don't eat cake, it'll make me fat. Cake makes you fat. But then he's like, I find that you don't gain weight as long as you burn calories by using your brain. And that's very apropos for chess, because the best chess players do, apparently burn like 600 calories per tournament game, or there's some weird statistic like that that's always floating around. Or the really dumb fact is like, oh, there's less chess grandmasters in the world than there are billionaires. But that's kind of a bad example, because how many people are trying to be billionaires, right, or doing something like that, business related, versus how many people are trying to play chess every day and become grandmasters? I'm not saying it's not still a substantial amount in both cases, but presumably there's more people in the world wanting to be a billionaire than there are people wanting to be grandmasters, and they're diametrically opposed in the most basic sense, because grandmasters make like minimum wage and billionaires obviously do not. So the point is that they're defined by something more universally pursued. Not saying everybody wants to be a billionaire either, but like, you can assume that of more people, whereas with chess, there's only a small number of people who really take it very seriously and really try to commit to it and progress. So there is some emperor wears no clothes fallacy, the king wears no clothes, where it's like the best chess players might say that, like, where, the best way to is to compare it against your peers. Like, okay, you're better than other people who have studied a lot. Like Hikaru's better than Benjamin Feingold, and they both obviously studied a lot. So that's different. That's a good thing to be proud of, right? Being 2,800 versus 2,500 or something like that. But what's not worth being proud of is, oh, you're 2,200 and you're better than most people in the world, right? But those most people don't really play the game or don't take it that seriously and haven't committed that much time to it, and so they don't really care that much. They literally don't care, as Hikaru would say. But I mean, he obviously, at least at one point, he did care to get to that point. So the Italian game Giochi Piano, and why is it called that? I don't even know, because it'll look like piano keys on the board somehow. But no, that is one that I would end up seeing a lot, and I guess I have a certain affinity for it without even realizing it. So what is my next natural move here that I would do? I would simply decide to... This is kind of exhausting a little bit. I guess I'm not used to, because normally you would take breaks and not talk this much even, but I'm trying to dissect every little move, right? This is the real difficulty of it. You're trying to just extrapolate what you're thinking in every last detail, and this is how active you should be during the course of a game, because, or I'm sorry, just have your GM buddy, whatever that guy's name is, like if you're Alex Botez, who's the guy who does the GM hammer, just have him do the commentary for you while you're playing an over-the-board sub 2,000 FIDE classical game. I saw that was like the first time they've ever played each other in a tournament, Alex and Andrea playing each other in the same, thing. I don't know if they set that up on purpose, like, just, oh, they're doing it for the content. Somehow they hijacked the system, but, they've apparently never played in an over-the-board tournament against each other in a game before. So here we have, again, you could just castle would probably be the operative move. These are the two razors to influence your process of elimination at the beginning of a game. You want a castle, so you can just do it with no repercussions. The main repercussion would be, just allowing the pin to happen. So I would go ahead, I would castle here normally. That's a good basic move. You could also decide to basically continue your development, but again, I would say castling probably takes priority over development, unless you want to play some Jedi mind trick game to make them think, oh no, I'm gonna make it seem like I want to castle one way, but then I'll end up castling the other way, like I'll castle queenside or leave the option open, which sort of stifles and hinders their attack, right? Even whether you actually do queenside castle or not, you just bait them and it throws them off, because they'll consolidate their attack on the king side, but then you'll bait them and castle queenside, so then it's useless, right? You escape. So you defensively queenside castle kind of in the middle of the game. I was actually doing that for a while, maybe closer to when I first came back, right? And it was kind of clever, because sometimes people would get thrown off by that. They would have all their pieces and all their attack on the king side, because they're assuming I'm going to kingside castle, and then I just don't. So it screws them all over, and then they can't recover. So there is a little bit of logic behind that, but generally speaking, you want to castle as quickly as possible. There's a lot of things at the low level that might work, like little tricks and gambits and sacks and stuff, that generally might not be the best move, but you get away with them because people don't know how to deal with them exactly. Like I just point out the whole pin thing. The pin isn't even that bad, but it's definitely bad for lower rated players psychologically, and it creates this kind of awkward pawn structure, and you're not going to know exactly how to deal with it. So you can't always go by what's objectively best, because you're not going to be able to play what is objectively best, or you're not going to know how to exactly deal with that position. So there's a certain comfort and convenience argument to be made. Like, you got to play a position that you're comfortable with, even if it's slightly worse or equal, right? Rather than a position that's uncomfortable that might be equal as well, or even a little better. That's the kind of sacrifice you have to make unless you really know it and really study it. But even then, you're going to be limited, because if they do something unexpected, that's something I'm surprised I haven't been punished for more, is like the fact that I'm one opening Andy. I do the same opening every single time pretty much as black and as white, aside from some reactive elements where I feel like I have to do something else, which happens more as black, like where I try to do the King's Indian and move the knight first, but you can't do it because they move the pawn like that. But the point being that I'm surprised I haven't gotten punished for it more. That would happen more in maybe shorter formats, but at least when you have time to think about it. But, somebody doing some gambit, gimmick, trick, I guess, theatricality and deception are powerful agents, but I'm too good and too initiated to fall for that. But honestly, I'm not. I've just been almost lucking out that a lot of these 15s and 1600s don't really do that, apparently. I can understand them not doing it in a classical game because they assume it wouldn't work, but in a standard game, in a 10-minute game, you almost don't have enough time always to figure it out, or I end up using the most of my time in the opening just because I don't know openings, and then if I can survive that, then I typically am a lot better than my opponent in the middle game and the end game. Even at least lately, I've been pretty good in end games for whatever reason. So, just get me to an even end game with enough time not to flag, and I can beat anybody or at least draw them. Like, it's impossible to beat me there within like 500 rating of me is what it typically feels like. Very weird flex, but it's just like, that's just somehow the nature of how the game works too. Like, if you just let me trade everything off, you're playing into my hands, because now the end game should be simple enough to just calculate your way through, even though I find them just as boring as openings. It's like, because there's so little on the board that it's a lot of repetitious, annoying, tedious sort of stuff. But I guess that's just like complaining about everything. You're complaining about the board that's completely full with every piece in the opening, and then you're complaining about, oh, there's not enough on the board, so that's boring too. In the end game, there's next to nothing. So no matter what scenario, one extreme or the other, you don't like it. Yeah, you would castle here. You could also develop, would be the only other thing, but he still isn't putting pressure on. If he had gone knight f6, then I would have gone knight c3, because then you're able to basically react to his threat. But since he's not doing that, I don't have to worry about anything. So there's one particular move here that you have to consider. And that one move is, let's say I castle, and he can't pin it down, right? Because he has to move the pawn first. So because you have to move the pawn first to d3, right? Or not d3, what is that? You have to move the pawn to d6, right? Then what you have to do is, okay, now you can pin it down, but it's going to take you a move. So if he go, let's say I castle, then he goes pawn to d6, then I go pawn to h3, and then everything is fine, unless he does some crazy sack play where he takes on h3 anyway, which sometimes people do and sometimes they get away with. That's what triggers me the most, when they do something objectively stupid, and you even see in the engine analysis later it's a blunder, but I still let them get away with it and sort of validate them, because I just don't know what to do with it, or I'm kind of giving them too much credit, or I'm panicking. Right, so then I'll end up losing to it, even though they did something objectively bad. But that almost makes it seem like, oh, they knew what they were doing, they did the right thing, even though they didn't, right? But somehow they knew they're playing against a clown like me, so they technically did do it right. So what you have here is the ability to consider one move that's a little bit scary. And the move that's scary is this one here, if you go like that, right? Even though it might not be the best move in any way, it does allow you to consider one possible thing, which is I castle and then he does this. Now I can't raise the pawn to h3 to stop the pin. Why? Because the bishop's under attack, and if I take this, then he can already pin it. So it's not that big of a deal. Again, the pin's not necessarily a bad thing, and he's giving up the pawn basically for free, and I guess he can't even still pin if I decide to take with the pawn. Then I can always come back and cover the pin on e2, and then also I can take the pawn on d5, and then I'm attacking his knight, so he's not going to just do that and do the pin. But just in theory, this move can potentially bother me, especially if maybe there's some other cover involved, like a pawn on c6 covering the pawn there or something like that. Maybe if his other pawn is on e6, then I move it to d5, right? Or he moves it to d5. So the point of doing all that is that you're attacking the bishop, so therefore it allows his bishop to be open and attack and pin down my knight without me being able to stop it, because of the simple fact that you have to react to the threat, so now you can't stop it. But again, normally that's not considered too good probably, and again, it's just sort of me overreacting to the pin that's not even necessarily that bad in the first place. So let's just go ahead and castle. I really wish I could continue these into the next episode, because this is kind of tiring to do. This is actually hard for me to, I don't know, it could be like it's kind of getting humid outside lately, so now it's kind of almost hard to breathe or hard to talk this much, but this is like very, it's a lot, right? It's not only mentally exhausting potentially, but it's also physically exhausting somehow, or I'm not used to this stupid ass I'm not used to this stupid ass. That's a good idea. The more pieces you have out, the better your attack will be. But I just castled. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm working. I guess I brought the rook out. That counts as a developing move because it's no longer on a starting square. I'm working on getting my bishop developed. Yeah, now this is the perfect pin play moment where you're able to look at it from a position of, yes, you do have to stop the pin from occurring. And the reason why you have to stop the pin from occurring is because you go to h3. Now again, it might not be objectively the best move, but what I'm not going to do here is try to figure out and study, oh, how would I play if I let him go to g4, and then I go to h3, and then they go to h5, and then I go to g4, and then they go to whatever, right? They'll go to g6, but then my pawns are completely fucked up, even though objectively they're not fucked up, they're perfectly fine, right? That's the point, is that you get to basically consider that in such a way that it's not that bad, but it's just confusing and hard for me to deal with, so I'm not going to try to figure that out, even as long form as I'm doing some of these things. Again, anybody could just sit here and beat these bots, although I'm not going to underestimate the ability of some of them, probably 1500 and up, catching you off guard and potentially beating you, so I wouldn't say I would take those so lightly, but again, it's not simply about beating them, it's about trying to learn something from the experience. So the simple move here is, again, just stop the pin. I'm reacting to what he's doing, even though it's not a direct threat. It's something that I just consider very dangerous. You got to also consider maybe there's some crazy threat I can do, like I can create a fried liver idea for the simple fact of like going knight to g5, and if I do that, if I had the pawn developed there, opening the bishop, the dark square bishop, right, to cover it, then that would potentially work. But again, these are kind of pie in the sky ideas that you shouldn't worry about. You should just react directly to what he's doing. There's nothing else really to think about. Again, the pawn on e4 is still uncovered, so at some point I want to develop the knight to try to cover it. If he develops his knight, though, I'm kind of giving him the initiative with that because I don't want to move the stinky knight right now. You just simply go pawn to h3. Nothing else is happening with the position. And again, the bishop is perfectly fine too, with respect to, as your coach, don't call yourself my coach, dude, you don't want that credit. I must take credit for how good your last move was. Do you see what I'm up to? Yes, the coaching of having talked to you for 5 minutes, even though I'm doing most of the talking. Like, I just met this person, I don't even know who this is. Is this like Aka Nemsko or something? Who the hell is Coach Mae? I actually want to look it up. Coach Mae. Yes, like let's get her whole background and lore. What rating actually is he? Coach Mae is a liar. It sounds good, coach who teaches you to bluff in chess. Chess is bluff, that's right. Was Peter? What the fuck is he saying? Coach Mae is animated now. Is Coach Mae a real person though? Because I thought Danny Rensch was a real person, right? Like an IM, but this chick is not. With the beautiful dude, this guy's down bad for a fucking virtual bot. Oh my god. For a 2D fictional character. Now you go knight to f6, but it doesn't seem like this is a real person because it would have shown up. I don't know. Why would they do that in sequence? Like, oh, here's Danny Rensch, and then here's somebody who's not real, and the rest of the bots won't be real. Why not put the real ones together, right? Like have a set of bots that are based on real people, and then have a set that are not, which they sort of do that in other categories. But so now you go knight to, yeah, already trying to chase cloud and take credit for this shit. Knight to f6. Right, so now this is a simple reactive move as well. These are the easiest moves to make, right? There's nothing tricky, crazy going on. They're attacking a piece, so just cover the piece. You have one of two options, right? Either you move the knight to c3, or you move the pawn to d3. So again, the logical razor is, oh, well, you're trying to do it in such a way that you want to actually develop the piece rather than simply develop a pawn. But there's some arguable line with respect to, okay, I want to open the dark square bishop so then I can pin his knight down and go to g5 with my dark square bishop, and then therefore I was doing the arrows actually a lot more and a lot better maybe last time. But yeah, I basically, you know, you want to go here so you can develop the bishop this way, and then pin it down. But here's one of these assumptive sort of moves that you have to make and give your opponent credit, whether it be an 800 bot or somebody at your level. Assume that they would do the same thing, like, oh, they're going to move their pawn to h6 and stop me from pinning, so it's a moot point. So the truly better player would say, okay, you want to get the bishop actually to here and get the bishop pair with this one, even though he could potentially take it with the knight anytime he wants now, because he can go to like knight to c5 or something, right? So the point being that assume that you want the bishop actually on b2, and so don't worry about this sort of pseudo, oh, you want to pin his knight and turn it into something and blah, blah, blah. Don't even worry about it. So the better move is probably the knight move, because it's a direct, you know, one move development thing, and just do it, and then worry about the dark square bishop later, right? Don't try to overdo it. So this is simple rationalization as well. Again, I also want to go to a3 to try to let the bishop escape. I also want to go to d3 to... I guess I don't need to do it for the sake of, because again, both of these moves are predicated on the same thing. You're trying to cover the pawn on e4, right? So you can either do it in one of two good ways here, which is, again, here's an example of like a bad way to do it. This is how a bad clueless player would do it, right? You would go, okay, let me bring the bishop here. You don't want that diagonal. You're giving up a good diagonal towards the king on c4 there, that you're attacking on f7, whatever that might come into play later. So you don't want to do that. You're kind of blocking the development of the pawn on the d file. So all these reasons is why that's a bad way to try to protect it, but it addresses the same threat. So you at least have the right core idea if you do that, but you have the wrong execution. So now again, you have the pawn move. This is the process of elimination moment. You have the pawn move and you have the knight move. And so again, the knight, I'm not even doing the arrow correctly, about as accurate as my chess moves, haha. The reason why you would do the knight move is, again, you're directly developing. You're also posing the potential threat like on a4, where you'd be threatening his bishop and stuff like that, her bishop, whatever. And so the point is that both of these moves are good. I just think the development is probably better than some hypothetical thing for the bishop, which again, you don't even necessarily want the bishop to go there. You want the bishop, assume you want the bishop like the light square bishop on a2 or whatever, and you want the dark square bishop like on b2 right here as a bishop pair. So assuming that you want that, don't waste your time trying to develop this pawn and then trying to put it over to here like on g5 to pin it down, because not only can he easily stop that with the simple pawn push of his own that we just demonstrated that I did, right? But also, you don't even necessarily want it there, and you don't necessarily even want to trade it. So what's the point? Even if you did pin it down, you don't have another attacker, right, present. And the reason why you don't have another attacker present is because it would have to be the same knight that I failed to develop, because I wanted to push the pawn instead that should be on c3 and then moving to here to double attack it and pose some problem for him that he wouldn't be able to address because his bishop is on c5 because it's outside the pawn, so now I can't go back to e7 to cover. And so based on all that in mind, you go, you know, if the knight was on c3, then you pin it down, then you're only one move away, but even then he could still push it out with his pawn, right? He could still go to h3, h6, and you know, you put the bishop there, and then you're like, okay, you're pinning it down, but you don't have the ancillary cover to bring in there within one move. Maybe he pushes the pawn, maybe I go back there, then he doesn't want to push this one for the same reason that it's an awkward pawn structure. So then I'm able to bring the knight to d5 and double attack it. Now there's nothing he can do, so he either has to give up a double stack or something, you know, just awkward, because it doesn't matter the fact that the queen covers, it just matters the fact that you can't take with the queen first, so therefore you have to open the king and double stack the pawn. So that's why the pin can be so damaging. But instead I am just going to go for a simple developing move to try to cover that pawn, obviously being the main emphasis here that you have to deal with. So let's go to c3 with this, so you cover. Your pawn is happier now. Shall we trade? A king doesn't care about the happiness of his pawns, dude. They're called pawns for a reason. They're expendable. Now this move is a little bit confusing, actually. I often do take that pawn, or I often do this trade, and I think I've looked at it in the engine, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. So it depends on maybe the rest of the position. What happens is you're in a position where God damn, I almost can't even fucking breathe. I don't know if it's because I'm talking so much or if it's because of the weather. It's actually hard. I have to maybe talk a little bit slower. Damn, it must be the weather actually because it's kind of hot. Um, let's just slow down a little bit. So now this intense 800 rated chess game is too much for me to fucking handle right now. Um, Oftentimes I will do this trade. Now let's consider all the variables at play here, right? So you go into here and he has only one choice to take with the pawn. So he'll take with the pawn on f7, right? And then you go right back there. Now this is good and bad, right? It's good because he double stacks the pawns, right? It's bad because he opens the rook once he castles to attack my king. And you might not think that's that big of a deal, but there is some sort of interplay that happens with the pawns here. You want to make a move later on, let's say, where you go like, you go here, and then if he takes with the pawn, then you open your rook. So in other words, you want to get rid of your rook pawn, but not theirs. So whichever of these rook pawns is not there, now your rook is automatically attacking towards their king, but their rook is only defending and it's not attacking, right? So you see how that's an important dynamic, and that's why pushing the f pawn as either side is often a very good play. Like, for example, at some point, you want to push it to here and do that exchange, so then if they take, then I take back with something, but now my pawn is open, and therefore my rook is attacking his king, but his pawn is still there, and so I'm attacking his pawn, but he's not attacking my pawn, right? He's simply defending his own pawn. So that's why that has a certain value to it, that you sometimes do want to open that rook attack towards the king. So let's think about why, and it also gives him another center pawn. So there's a whole bunch of logical razors as to why that's potentially good, as far as like, okay, I take the bishop, he gets another center pawn, even though it is double stacked, and then also he gets the rook attack towards the king. Now, I don't think any of that is that big of a deal right now, but in the long term, in a higher level of a game, it might actually be something to consider, right? That could be a relevant factor. So normally I would take. What else could I potentially do? You have to address the bishop here, not because you want to necessarily do the trade, but because you have to, because it's not covered. So you have a few options here, process of elimination, but the key piece involved we should highlight is the bishop. So you can go here to try to pin it down, which again, what could I follow that pin move up with? Because he could just go to a6, right? And so I'm pinning down, then I would go back, then I would go back again. And so we'll go back to like a4, and then we'll go back to like b3, right? And so if we do that, he could end up taking it anyway. So we could just go to b3 now anyway, instead of giving him all that free pawn development, unless my heart is set on taking the knight, which also poses a similar situation, where if I take the knight from there, then he only has one cover, so it's the pawn, so he's double stacked. I guess the only difference is you're not opening his rook, like on the f file, to attack your king. You're just simply opening the rook to come to the b file, which isn't as big of a deal, right? That's not as damaging of a play necessarily to make. So now what you have is, again, that pin doesn't seem particularly valuable unless you had a double attack to bring in. For example, if you could somehow bring the knight to e5 to double attack it, then it might be worthwhile as it's pinned. But the problem is you don't have that ability, so again, in both cases, you're potentially posing a trade that could double stack the pawns. Outside of that, what else do we have? We have the simple ability to, again, we can either take the bishop, which is in my normal trading mentality, but I'm trying to sort of resist the temptation to do that a lot of the time here. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure a way to, again, you have like these potential moves. You can move back to the other side of the board too. Again, this I consider probably a bad move. Let's try to rationalize exactly why or how these are bad moves. And so what I feel like is, I almost need like an air conditioner, which I don't have, which also would maybe make too much noise and it'll fuck up my mic. This is like one of the first days where it's really gotten hot outside around here. So the point is, these are all the valid moves you can make. Going back to E2 is probably too passive of a move, so we can kind of discount that one. Moving back to D3 is, again, kind of a stupid move. You're kind of blocking the development of the D pawn, and so there's no need to really do that. And so now let's exclude those two moves, right? Going back here is kind of passive and undoing your own development in a way that's sort of unbecoming, and so you don't necessarily want to do that. So you're left with the three moves, which are take the bishop, pin the knight, which, again, the only reason why you'd want to pin the knight, this would, going back, would also be sort of passive and end up double stacking your pawns, which I can't imagine that's really a good thing to do. The real reason why you might rationalize this move isn't because you really want that to happen, right, with the double stack of the pawns or with some other some other cover that you could potentially have. The real reason why you're going back is because you want him to initiate the trade rather than initiating it yourself. And the reason why you want to do that is because, okay, he'll take back with the pawn, the hypothetical person we're playing against, they'll take back with the pawn, and, or no, it's more like I'm assigning gender to the piece itself. The bishop is a male, not necessarily the player. So I assume every piece is male except for the queen, because no other piece lets you know, aside from the king and the queen, what gender they potentially are. Right, so you're misgendering a fictional chess piece over here. Truly the crime of the age. But what you would do here is you would basically decide to, I take the bishop, but again, the reason why you would want to lay back and not do this, and the whole reason why you would second guess it, is because of the simple fact that you would decide to do it in such a way that you see how this could like go on forever, and this is the whole way that chess actually works, and the whole point of the game is that this is what you would do, especially against higher rated bots. Like, you could literally do this for fucking ever, and that's the whole point. So what you would do is you would do it in such a way that you would move back or move away so that he can't, so that either he would initiate the trade or the trade doesn't happen. And you're trying to avoid and sidestep this trade on here. And the reason why you're trying to do that is because, again, you're afraid of the rook being open here because that pawn gets to take. And so let's say you don't want to let that happen, right? Assuming you're afraid of that. I don't know how good that actually is, but sometimes that can be a desirable position for his rook to be open on the f-file attacking the king because his pawn took from f2 on f7 onto e6, right? That's why you don't want to allow that to happen. Even though it is a double stack, there's all these kind of conflicting principles, right? Giving them a center pawn, an extra center pawn, is bad because center pawns are generally considered to be good. But then at the same time, double stacks are also bad. Right, so these principles are conflicting. It's a bad thing for him that he gets a double stack, but it's a good thing for him that he gets another center pawn. It's also a good thing for him that he potentially gets the rook open attacking on the f-file. Right, so that's another consideration there. And so now the only thing left for you to consider here is the simple fact that I don't want to get like tired and rush it either. Like, oh, let's just beat this bot real quick, because again, that's not the whole point of doing this. But this shows you that even with my long form prognostication and tendency, where I tend to like to do things like this, just in games in general, like it could be a story game, I'm going to sit there and really come up with a theory, or something like a detective game, or whatever. I like to do things sort of slow paced a lot of the time, take my time, get immersed. Even I'm getting sort of a little bit weary of this at times. So that shows you that's when you know it's really bad. But no, the point is that we basically get to, yeah, why is this so much more tiring than just, like, I've done those 14-hour streams of chess and everything. Maybe it's something about the position that I'm in. Maybe it's something about having to actually physically move the board because it's like an awkward angle. There is something about this that's actually kind of annoying, I must admit. I don't know exactly what it is, but let's see. That's happened on some of these other episodes too. Like, why is this so physically exhausting just to sit here and do this? I don't have like a special chess chair that people would use, right? Like in tournaments, they have like a special chair maybe made for that purpose. Like, I'm watching this thing on the chess sets. How much do the World Championship chess sets cost? More than a Grandmaster makes in a whole year, probably. Am I right? Haha. But that means the bar is set pretty low, though. It could still be pretty cheap. But either those sets, or either, again, even how much do the chairs cost? How much does the air conditioning cost for one of these chess World Championship venues and all this kind of crazy stuff? So again, the reason why you would go back and hang back with the bishop is because you get to do it in such a way that you want him to initiate the trade, you don't want to do it yourself, or you want to deny the trade altogether. But the reason why you don't necessarily want to do that is because of the simple fact that, again, if you go to bishop to b5, you would want to do the trade on the knight and double stack his pawn there, which could be pretty good. It's really hard to say. Like, there's no sure thing here as far as what the best thing to do is, but probably doing the trade is okay, right? And we can deal with it, but this is one of those indecisive moves where there's a lot of good things you can potentially do. You can pin down his knight, and you would have to decide, like, okay, I think the knight's going to be better in this position, but that almost is never the case and actually true. So, you know, his move, her move to e6 is, their move to e6 is, it's not a good move necessarily, right? Because you're leaving yourself in a position where you could get double stacked with the pawn. I guess the reason why you disqualify this move of the process of elimination is because you don't go there. And the reason why you don't go there is because of the simple fact that what could they do to undo your work on that move? You go bishop to b5, but then they just go back with their bishop to d6, so it's not guaranteeing a pin, and it's not also guaranteeing the double stack of the pawn, right? Because again, look at it here. You go here with the bishop, right? But then they go there, and so what ends up happening is the simple fact that if you allow that to happen, right, what you're doing is you're doing this with the premise that the only reason why it's worth it to move the bishop there to pin it down is if you're going to take the knight. But taking the knight isn't worth it because now you take with the bishop back, and so nothing's double stacked. So there's actually no reason to make that move. So the only two moves remaining that make any sense at all, as we have to address this uncovered bishop, and we have to go back to here, the only moves that actually make sense are the simple fact that fuck. Yeah, air quality greatly affects chess play too. So like this is maybe you need like a special air conditioner for it. That's why I'm a bad player, because I don't have an AC at my house. Maybe that could be an excuse that you have, or because I'm wasting all this oxygen always talking during the course of games. That's the real reason, not because you're distracted by actually streaming. That could be maybe a good legitimate excuse. But no, it's like you would take his bishop, her bishop, right? And then you would consider these two moves. Not the move I'm actually showing there. My arrow is not very good here. You would either take there or you would either go there. So why would be going to b3 be a bad idea? Yes, it would double stack your pawn instead of double stacking their pawn by taking, but it would also prevent him from opening up the rook there on the f file. So maybe my whole idea about why doing that is so bad isn't correct. Maybe having his rook open to the f file isn't as bad as what I'm thinking and giving it credit for, and so therefore, you know, I'm overreacting and I'm panicking and saying, okay, let's go to b3 and then we'll double stack the pawn. But it's not necessarily the case, because it's not necessarily that bad to double stack a pawn there either, right? If you do it, the c pawn goes to b3 or the a pawn, whatever it is. Again, you're going to lose your bishop pair here anyway, so I'm just going to assume that the better move would probably be to take, just because I've seen it in the engine somewhere at some point in various other games that I've done over time. This is where you learn stuff just purely through repetition. Like, it's not really that I even necessarily have to understand it. It's just that, oh, I've seen it so many times in my analysis of games over time in the engine, so now I just commit it to memory that, like, oh, I know. Like, that's not one sequence at the beginning that I know so well. Like, I can't really explain exactly what it is, but you put the knight, then you put the bishop attacking their knight or something like that, and then you bring the queen, so you leave a lot of pieces kind of locked in combat, but you don't actually take any of them, and you just sort of leave it there. And so I'm going to take the bishop, and I'm going to assume that that's the best move, right? It's not even my trade happy tendency that's making me do that. So what exactly did we forget to do? We forgot to even move their bishop there in the first place, but we end up taking, and then they end up having to take right back with the pawn, or at least you would assume that that's what they would do, but you have to remember these are low-rated bots, so I better not make those moves early and make too many assumptions. here we go, and of course I take back. You're saying of course, but would your 400 rated buddy Danny Rensch have done the same thing? Because maybe not. Okay, let me come back in a second here. Okay, let's continue this here. I do have the desktop audio on too, just so you can hear like maybe the movement of the pieces. But normally when I would play chess, I would always listen to music. But just for these sessions, I guess this is like super instructive. I should put that as a tag, like on OBS and Twitch, like actually instructive chess streams for once. Whereas normally I just kind of dick around and just do whatever. But hey, I got to 1600 by doing that, and almost 1500 on chess.com. So that means, you know, I'm better than 70% of people in the world, so that means I'm actually good. So my way works, but obviously I've always just refused to study and hated doing it. And even now, I still don't really want to do it. So this is like my placebo act of studying. Like I'm kind of doing it, you know, I'm kind of doing it in this way by trying to make it Coach Mae bot. That's even but shouldn't this game have like a specific URL to it, like the fact that it's not just playing the Coach Mae bot, like anybody could type that in. It's specifically my game and my position, so that's kind of weird that that's just the general URL that you have. But let's go ahead and try to see what we can do here now. Again, it's not a bad position. We're spending a lot of time on the opening, which maybe I shouldn't bother. That is one thing that you probably should just study overall, because it's so monotonous and so tedious and just so much of a borrowed knowledge fiesta that it's just 100% memory, and everybody, you know, would agree with that, but you still kind of swear by it. Like, it becomes an equalizing factor at the higher level, right? That ends up being what the problem is. The fact that every good player is going to know them and learn them and study them. And so what ends up happening is that it gets to the point where you can basically, you know, it doesn't matter. It ends up not having any impact on the game because everyone's going to play it exactly the right way. Although I guess you could say that about just the game overall, right? Everybody's gonna play every aspect of the game exactly right, and so because of that, it ends up in a draw every time, which it does obviously the majority of the time anyway. The longer the time format, the higher the rating, the better quality of the game it is, the more draws you're actually going to see, which is, you know, actually objectively a flaw of the game, which nobody wants to ever admit. But, you know, you'll give players credit, like, oh, they played so perfectly, but the better you play, it shouldn't mean that it ends in a draw. It means that somebody should win. But, you know, it's just not the way that the game works. So let's think about what we want to do here potentially. Of course, the whole glove thing is maybe worse too. I never thought about that when it gets hotter. But I just do this to, like, the Ray Enigma effect. Like, you don't want to have any element of that sort of cult of personality or whatever, like making it about the person. So I certainly don't do face cam in that same vein. But obviously, in the same way, I wouldn't do hand cam or any other sort of thing. I'm just doing this as a gimmick, obviously, overall. So, again, the pawns are double stacked. That would be something actually instructive to look at, though, to consider whether this is actually that good or not. Like, it is a double stacked pawn, but it is also an extra center pawn, and it's also opening the F file of the rook to attack your king if they decide to castle. So, that is kind of a conflicted move. Right, so now I'm already a step ahead, I'm already castled, and so now some line at some point is going to be, you know, you want to finish developing anyway, but outside of that, there could be a line that you move the white square knight, white square knight. I mean, technically it is, but the one knight here you want to move to there, and then you want to push your pawn to try to open the king, open the rook towards their king in the same attack. But it might be, I might have already missed the boat because their pawn's not there, so that kind of puts me at a disadvantage where now their rook's also covering there. So if they take, you know, if they take, then I take, and then they take, and then whatever, you need like an extra cover, and it's just kind of awkward, and it might not be as good of a move now, but that's one of the primary core attacking principles that you have, is moving the F pawn and opening that so that the rook can attack their king. That is actually one of the big, you know, it's been like a brilliant move before, just by me simply doing that. Just making a simple move like moving, you know, pawn to F4 here would be like a brilliant move, or at least it's a good attacking move, right? Just because you get to open the... There must have been more nuance why that was brilliant in that particular case, but in general, that is a good idea. But let's leave that to the side for now because we have one piece left to develop. So this is still the logical razor at the opening of the game that you just want to continue to develop. So you have two ways to try to potentially do it. And now it leads to me actually wanting to make a V-shaped structure where I end up putting the pawns like this, right? And the reason why is because now that the light square bishop is traded off, you don't have to worry about that light square diagonal. So all you care about is the one diagonal on B2 that you're trying to go towards the king, right? That's the only diagonal you have to protect. So in that sense, it's actually kind of a good thing. Well, not really a good thing, because the other pawn structure you would have gone for is simply the fact that you would have gone like this, right? You attack the bishop, you put the one, you attack the bishop, you put the one bishop here, right, on B2 still. But then you also have the light square, you also have this structure with the pawns where you just move this pawn here. I'm really not good at doing the arrows. I'm doing it with the touchpad too because I don't have a mouse, because my gaming laptop here doesn't have enough USB ports for my mic, my webcam, and my my fucking mouse. So I end up doing mouse or keyboard. So I end up doing this kind of just raw with the touchpad, which is actually fine, but the point being here, you would get the bishop pair because the one bishop would be here, the other bishop would be there. And so now, even though these pawns are split, and you have like two anchor pawns, which I always criticize, the assumption is that your bishop's always going to be there, right, covering it. So actually the light square bishop could be here. But I don't know, for some reason I always feel like that's under attack potentially by a knight or something that's going to get pushed out. But the light square bishop is here, the dark square bishop can be here, and so now you're covering both anchor pawns with the bishops, as well as having a bishop pair going towards and attacking the king, right? So that's perfectly fine for you to consider, but since we traded off the light square bishop, that's the one thing it allows me to do, is now I can create a single anchor pawn light square structure here, where you go like this with the pawns, right, where it's this V shape, that would be really worth it to cover. So if you end up bringing the rook here, you're covering 5 pawns with one rook. So that actually makes it worth it because one pawn is doing all the work and it's not split and they're all on light square. So it's all acquiescing to to your ability to actually use the dark square diagonal. So there's a lot of good logic behind that. Even if these V-shaped structures aren't always the best, or it's just my own imaginary, aesthetic value for them, I can almost guarantee you it's not correct, because there's always kind of these advanced pawn moves that you have to make, and I don't know, just assuming that's something beyond your level at this point, and you don't really have to worry about it. At least it's logically consistent. But the core point is that you want to go ahead and do one thing, which is to develop either this pawn or that pawn to try to actually move the bishop. And the reason why you want to do that is because it's your last undeveloped piece, and of course that kind of takes priority over everything else. And so, right, this is the same process of elimination that we're trying to do. So I would prefer go to B3 so that we're able to put it on B2. The only reason why you would move D3, I'm sorry, is if you want to pin down the knight. But again, that's pretty easy to stop if they just simply do H6, so then why would you even bother doing it? So that kind of answers the question for you, that this is the best move, probably B3. Again, it's only the best assuming that you want to go for this janky V-shaped pawn structure, which of course I do, but it doesn't mean that it's really the best thing to do, but I'm fine with it. You got B3 over there. That opens the scope for your bishop. Now they make a bad knight move, but I can't punish it, right? Moving a knight to the edge of the board in a weird way that's not really developing, even though their development is already done, right? So somehow you got to consider something, even though this is an 800 rated bot. If you go back one step in this position, right? Let's go ahead and make this move for them, but somehow they were one step ahead of me in the development, if you think about it, or even now they still are, right? They made a frivolous knight move to the edge of the board, but my bishop still isn't developed. So how could that be? How is it that as black, you know, they've developed everything, I guess, because they missed the one move to castle. So because I castled, I missed one move of development, right? But theirs is actually better than mine if you really think about it. They have the Dark Star Bishop, they had the knight there, now they fucked it up by, you know, moving it out like that. But I guess arguably saying that the development is complete is not true, though, because their rook is still on the starting square because they haven't castled. So that's not only a castling move, but obviously, as even the bot was just saying, you have to think of that as also a developing move, right? The act of moving the of castling is also developing the rook, because otherwise it's useless where it is now, and it's kind of going to get blocked by the king, and so you obviously have to castle to do that. It's just I don't really think of it like that, really. But, you know, oh, the rook is still on the starting square, so therefore it's not developed. So in a sense, like, okay, I haven't developed the Dark Star Bishop yet, they haven't developed the rook yet, so they haven't castled yet, so I sacrificed one move worth of development to try to I sacrificed one move's worth of development to try to castle instead, which is okay, and arguably castling, like I said, is a developing move, but there is something strange about that when you think about it. If you go back a couple moves, you'd be wondering how the hell is black developed before you are as white, and so it makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong, but I'm technically not. So what you could try to do here, though, is actually get a fork. Right now, this is one of those strange things that it seems like they made a bad move with the knight by bringing it to a5 here, right? Put it on the edge of the board. It's weird, it's random, it's not threatening anything, there's nowhere forward for it to go, right? So this seems like a terrible knight move that you would really like to punish and bully it around, right? But you have to figure out exactly the right way of how you would do that. It can't go back there, so you can think about what the knight's options actually are from there, right? You can't go forward and threaten the knight on b3 because I would just take you back with another pawn, right? You can't go to c4 because I would just take you with the pawn. You can't go back to b2, b7 because you would just block by your own pawn. So there's no purpose whatsoever, no matter who you are, that knight move served. It's a completely garbage F- knight move. There's no reason to do it, right? And it does open up this possibility of a fork. So these are the three options of a move that you would have. Do you want to go here to create the aesthetic V-shaped structure that I was talking about, right, where you still have to complete it there? So do you want to do that one? Do you want to develop the bishop like I was intending to b2? Or do you want to go here with the rook, because that does allow you to do the fork? So now if you want to look at the fork move, right, I think it's unlikely I'm going to want to do the a4, but let's just leave it there as a consideration. If you do the fork, now let's consider, with no external help of the arrows or whatever, or even without, you know, moving the pieces and cheating like that on the board, what would be the potential of what he would do to that fork, right? How would they be able to squirm their way out of that? So if I put the pawn on b4 after moving the rook there, assuming that he lets me even do it in the first place, if you take with the bishop, I take back with the rook. If you move the knight anywhere, I can just take it, or it doesn't matter, right? It's not really doing anything wherever it goes. So technically that is a good thing to do, but this is one of those wishful thinking moments where it's like, maybe bishop to b1 isn't good because... But see, this is how even high-level chess works. Sometimes you pose a threat, not because you think it's going to work and they're not going to see it. Like, oh, I hope this guy blundered this fork or something. No. They're going to see it, and you know they're going to see it, and they know that they're going to see it, but you still do it because you still have to advance the position and do what you got to do. So you do a bunch of fake threats that you know aren't going to work, right? That you know your opponent's good enough to be able to see. You know, you got to have that assumption. Anything you can see, they can see too, because you're both the same level. So why would you expect something to, you know, catch them off guard? But you still have to do it, I guess. Like, you still have to pose the threat and try to get some other ancillary advantage from it later, or whatever. There's something to it beyond just that. So it doesn't mean that, oh, this threat's so obvious that you shouldn't do it, because every threat is obvious all the time to everyone, because if a clown like me can see it, then anybody can see it. But you got to think deeper. Like, is this move actually a good developing move for the rook? You are technically developing it because I hadn't moved off its starting square yet, but but you arguably want it to go on c1 to cover that V-shaped anchor thing that you're talking about, to cover the anchor pawn on c2 that covers all the other pawns, right? But But it's hard to say whether that's actually the right thing or not. Like, it's probably not a bad move, but it's also one of those fixating on a threat. So now he's going to at least have to react to it. That's going to be awkward. I can't fucking, whatever. Every chess player is male. Yes, clearly I'm doing this as some sort of intentional thing. So that probably will be my move. I'm a little bit hesitant about it because these are exactly the kind of moves I advise against. Like, oh, you're trying to pose a threat, you're trying to do an attack, but you're not a GM level player, so whatever attack you're going to do is never going to work, even against these other low rated players, right? Your predicate for this move should not be that, oh, I hope they make a mistake and let me fork them. That should not be the reason why you're making the move. You know that they're going to see it, and you know that they're not going to let you fork them. But the hope is that because you're posing the fork, now he has to just waste a move and go back with the knight to like C6, and I got a free move of development. I got a free move of development with the rook. That's the real way to look at it, right? So where can you go with the knight when you have this potential threat, right? So the only place you can go is back. You can't go to C4, I take it. So you're just doing it to sort of bait the knight away. Now, if they do give up the fork, that would be interesting, but developing your rook, right? So that's why it's good, not because of anything else. My knight takes a commanding position that it already had before that I got rid of for no reason, just to be a clown and move to the edge of the board. Very commanding indeed. Now, did she do that because she knew she was going to get forked, or did she just do that to take a commanding position with the knight? Because there's nothing commanding really about C6, dude. Like, what is it doing there? But, okay. So now, do I go for the V-shaped structure, or do I try to do something else? Like, for example, I could push that pawn up. See, now you're out of the opening completely, although they still haven't castled, but I can't really do anything to take advantage of that, right? Like, you're not going to be able to attack them in time to really punish that. So what you have is, you could potentially do this, which seems like a pointless move. You could do this. You could develop your bishop here. It almost makes me want to somehow pin and trade, but especially when you only have one bishop left, you shouldn't think like that. So what you have is the ability to basically... what you have is the ability to basically... I'm just trying to think about this from somebody else's perspective. Like, imagine somebody actually doing this, but this is what people don't get. Like, this might seem stupid, but in some extrapolated sense, isn't this what everybody does? Maybe not playing a bot, maybe not streaming it, stuff like that. But I'm saying, like, they're going to sit there and they're going to read a chess book. A 1,500 rated player on chess.com is going to sit there and do that. They're going to study theory. They're going to, analyze their games in great detail. Like, it seems sad and stupid that that's what the state of the game is at a low level. Like, people aren't just playing it and trying to, just make progress. They're trying to cheat the game, and they're trying to study, and they're trying to do all these crazy things, right, that are not necessarily the best or something that you really need to do. But what necessitates it is the fact that everyone else does it. So then you become the very thing you swear to destroy, because you're like you're saying, like, oh, I hate studying, but then I have to study because everyone else studies. So if I don't study, it doesn't mean they're better than me. It means that, oh, they've studied and I haven't. So now I have to study to level the playing field. So now everybody studies. That's just how openings work. Like with GMs and stuff too. Everybody knows them. Everybody plays them perfectly, almost. And so therefore, they're basically irrelevant. The first 10 moves can just play themselves, but you still have to do it. So... right, that's why people are so allured by these variants. Like, okay, chess 960 is so good because you could still come up with openings for every position there as far as what the best thing is. So it doesn't mean that you couldn't do the same thing. It's just harder to do, and it's, you're playing 960 versions of the one version that you play over and over. So any one of those positions, hypothetically, could turn into its own version of chess. That would be the really funny thing. Not if chess 960 takes over, but what if some different position, one single position there, people decide, oh, this is the best one. And so... or imagine if that happens for a tournament game. The original starting position for chess could be one of those hypothetical positions that you get, right? One of the 960. So what if that's the one you get? In the chess 960 finale, we get the base starting position of chess. How instructive, how incredible, right? How unique, because that's like a troll. All right, it probably hasn't happened yet because they haven't even had that many high-level tournaments for it in the first place, but... The point here is I should probably just move the bishop and forget about that whole idea, but you could potentially make a cheeky threat onto here. And the reason why you can do that is because you get to basically say, like, okay, now where does the dark square bishop go? If it goes to d4, I can take it with the knight. If it goes to anywhere else, I can potentially take it. You can't take the pawn. Or actually, no, I'm completely flawed in my premise. You have the knight there, so you could just double take it, and so that move is out the window. Yeah, I'm tunnel visioning on something that I'm extrapolating on, like, you know, oh, I was trying to fork the knight and the bishop, so now that didn't work, so now I'm trying to still push that threat, but there's no reason to do that. Right, so just let that thing go, nothing's really happening, just develop your final piece to what is potentially a good diagonal, even though it might take a while to come to fruition, really. Right, so you go to there. Now the rook's position is a little bit confused because it's not really doing anything. Right, so that should be perfectly fine. You fianchettoed your bishop, putting it on the longest diagonal. I didn't even know that's what that meant, actually. My demonstration of castling will have to wait until our next game, I'm afraid. What the fuck do you mean, dude? What the fuck do you mean? I'm just gonna do the Von Cloud and just not castle. What is this, dude? This is supposed to be instructive. And I know this is what you get from playing a low-rated bot, but I like how willfully she does that. Like, I thought you meant that in a different sense. Like, yeah, you won't get to castle because I'm going to beat you before then, but what kind of defeatist, stupid move is that? So now, I don't know what to make of it. See, I'm trying to take this game so seriously, and then she just clowns me like, okay, dude, long cloud opening. I don't know if this is still considered that. Maybe you have to do that at the very beginning for it to be the long cloud, but I love that. That's not like a bot being bad. That's like a bot trolling you. Like, she's actually a 2400 IM, right? Just like Danny Rensch, but she's just trolling me. Hey, welcome back, Nightmare. So she teaches me the meaning of fianchetto and gives me a little long cloud special. So now, what do we do with this position? You have this sort of dark square X-ray vision thing that a GM would see, like, oh, you know, that knight's the only thing stopping you from being pinned down to your king and queen with the, you know, with the bishop. So you would want to put the dark square bishop on that diagonal at any cost, even though I just fianchettoed it, and even though I maybe don't want to do that. Right, it's never going to work, clearly, but I should maybe just finish the development of my pawns, even though I'm being like super passive in the process, but that is like my net style of play. And so now I don't know exactly what to do with it. I'm kind of, here's where I sort of run out of abilities to even rationalize what I'm doing. Like, I just start to do stuff. But when your opponent is literally doing the Bong Cloud wannabe opening, I don't know what to make of it. Like, what the fuck is that? So my natural ideas here would just be, okay, do this so that you can move this knight. So you can cover it, do this so you get the V-shaped structure with the one anchor pawn. But then if I was really intending to do that, I should have not put the rook here and wasted that move. I should have just put it on C1 after moving the bishop there first. So I already kind of did that in a way that was sort of like wishful thinking, that you're thinking, oh, I hope this works, but you should never be like that. So now moving the bishop back to try to do that pin towards the king and the queen is not worth it. Right, but that's all it would basically take. You know, you go back with the bishop, and then you say, well, go here, but then you still can't get the knight to move, so it doesn't really matter. Like, all these sort of wishful thinking ideas that don't really have any value to them. So you have these two pawns to potentially move. This one's just kind of a nice one to do, but this one's kind of a necessary one to do because it frees up the knight. So I'll do that one instead. But these still feel like very passive plays, because you're not really taking advantage of what is their very bad position without the castle. I'm so happy to be playing chess with you. That's a canned line that somebody else said already too, even with the few that we played. Maybe Danny Rensch said that, or is that a bishop in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? Haha. So you move the little pawn here. Okay, dude. So what do we got here? We have the ability to double push that pawn now. I mean, you can't argue with the results of my pawn structures like that. Even if I lose games, that's not generally the reason Planetside 2. Okay. I don't know if that's even still playable, actually. Some of these have been on there so long. It should be. I think they even made like a Planetside 3. Right? It's kind of cool because it's like this asynchronous thing that never ends, right? It's like you go into a game and it's ongoing. So you'll go in there for 10 hours and then quit. And then you'll come back in the morning and people will still be playing that same match. It's like a super ongoing. Why are you putting dead games on the redeem? But that's kind of part of the point of the Saturday format, is that games that are dead that I won't get a chance to play again, right, is what I try to prioritize. But it should still be playable. It just maybe won't have too many players on it. But no, I kind of like to do that, like games that are about to be delisted and stuff like that, so that I get one and only chance to ever play it. So okay, what do we got here? We have the simple consideration to double push that pawn. Like I'm being super lazy with it, but there's no threat that they're actually posing to me, so they're not able to actually make me feel bad about this very weak sauce thing. What made you first start playing chess? My friend David taught me a long time ago. Wait a second. Didn't somebody else say that too? I haven't played this bot before, so why? That's weird. Didn't the Boomer or somebody say that? Why are they recycling lines like that? Billion-dollar company, by the way. I don't know if it even actually is. What is chess.com net worth? 385. Wait, what? What the fuck are you talking about? $385,000? What are you, stupid? Around 100 million. Yeah, that's more like it. What do you mean? I'll buy it for 385 right now, dude. I'll sell my house, which isn't even worth close to that, but still. 385,000. You must be joking, dude. It's hilarious how much some of these things are worth, though, because like, what is it? It's just a site that lets you play chess. Like, sure, certain features and things might be good or this or that, but like, really, dude, just something that's playing chess and you're kind of trying to take monopoly over it. If I get 50k points, you buy me ice cream. I mean, I could, but how would I buy it? I'll just give you a free sub or something, or I don't know. I should come up with some really crazy reward for 50k. Okay, so what made you first start playing chess? Yeah, what did make me first start playing it? Like, my dad played it a little bit, so I played it because of that, and I would play against him. Like, that might be the only reason. I don't know. Or you buy me your favorite food, and I will post a video of me reviewing it. Yeah, that's what I've been doing on these stupid webcam things. Is there a Dairy Queen where you live? I like their chicken there. I'll buy you their fast food chicken. Like the barbecue. I was stunned by how good that is, because it's like you go to Dairy Queen for like some kind of ice cream or dessert, right? You're not expecting them to actually have good food, but their chicken is actually pretty damn good. It's like some kind of a honey barbecue thing. You know where Dairy Queen is. But no, I was shocked. Like, I was getting it just for the fuck of it. Oh, let's try this chicken. Let's see how bad it is. But it was actually great. Alright, so what am I doing now here? You have the V-shaped structure, so now officially the middle game begins for me now, even though it technically began before, because, you know, your pieces were developed, but now I got my aesthetic pawn structure. And my weakness with these is it looks good and it has one anchor and all that's consistent. But what's the weakness? It's the fact that, well, on one hand, the dark square could still be attacked by the bishop, thereby preventing the rook from covering it, thereby allowing him to take it with potentially the queen or knight or something else later, right? So that's the weakness. The position doesn't line up with the color of the bishop, but also probably Dairy Queen is better, yeah. Sadly, their chicken is better. I like KFC for some of the sides, like the mac and cheese and stuff, but, or, you know, the biggest atrocity of the modern era was that KFC got rid of their potato wedges, one of their best menu items. How do you get rid of that? And they're still never brought them back. Like, it's one thing, oh, they got rid of them because of COVID or this or that, but they just never brought them back. For you, mac and cheese is tasteless. I kind of like theirs. That is one of my favorite kind of foods, actually, just in general, too. Like, what other good mac and cheeses have been out there? I don't know. Like Ponderosa or something like that has it, or I don't know if that's even a national chain, or if it's just like where I live, but I don't know. I mean, I eat a lot of frozen packets like that. You know, microwavable mac and cheese. That's one of my main staples of my diet besides fast food. Just because they're convenient, but I do like it. Yeah, speaking of American food, at least it feels like mac and cheese is American, kind of. Um, yeah, how about a hot dog? In before he says, oh, it's from England or something, like, yes, but a lot of things from the US are from England, including originally, at least most of the people, or not originally, but whatever. That's always a funny discussion. Like, it's hard to trace things back far enough. What we have here is a very free-form, open sort of move. So if I was trying to attack his queen, his king, the only thing I can think of logically, this is where I kind of give up. See, like, I can't rationalize my moves anymore because there's nothing, but that's arguably why it's the best part of the game. So I should try to double attack. But see, this would let him undouble his pawns too. $7 meal is the best where I live. Chicken tenders, mac and cheese, and JoJo's. What is JoJo's? $7 meal. From where? Is that the name of the place, JoJo's? Let me think. Yo-Yo or JoJo in Washington? I see. You know what they got rid of around here that was kind of sad is that Panda Express. It's like some fast food Chinese, and I don't even like it that much, but everyone I know kind of loved it, and they had like only one of them left, and now you have to go to like New York City, or you have to go like super far to find one. There's like just none in the state anymore. But yeah, there was one in my local area that was hanging on for dear life, and then they shut it for whatever reason. Yeah, but see, this is the kind of move that would baffle you. I can't even begin to, like, what do you want me to think of this? Like, there's a million different things you can do, and I can't figure out any of them, so it's not even a bad position. Never tried Panda Express. It looks like the local post office on the inside. I don't know about the post office thing, but yeah, it's like Americanized Chinese food. Oh wait, that's the kind that you get here anyway from like an actual Chinese restaurant. But you know, it's like very. It doesn't even really taste like Chinese food. It's not really bad, but it's just kind of weird. I don't know. But now you kind of crave it, just or people in this area do, just because we don't have one, and we never will again, I guess, because it's weird that it would just do that. That there's just zero. Like you'd have to literally go like 200 miles to find one. It's so random. Go to some military base like up in Canada, or go to New York City if you want to have it. So what the hell am I doing, dude? Okay, look, the natural extension is going to be, okay, move the F pawn, try to open the thing, go there. But see, even that's a bad move. And the reason why it's a bad move is because, I don't know. The reason why it's a bad move is because of the simple fact that it's, it would allow you to undouble the pawns, right? You go there, and then he takes, and then I take. But then, what? Like, now you undouble the pawn, so I can't do that. I have to take advantage of it somehow. Upcoming debate format, Area 51, and what it might hide. I mean, it could be something to do with aliens. That's the whole funny thing with conspiracy theories. Like, you know, people sometimes take things too far with the theories they come up with, but there's a reason for it in the first place. Like, for example, why is Area 51 associated with the aliens? Like, where did it originally come from, that rumor? It probably came from the fact that it's actually true and something to do with it actually did happen there, and then people just extrapolate on that, right? It's not like people just pulled that out of their ass and said, oh, I just think it has to do with aliens, right? So that's the sad part. There probably was some aliens thing discovered there, and they hid it there, and fine, you know? It might not be quite in the way that you think. Like, it doesn't have to be like a super intelligent one or something. Or I don't know how you would really define it. Like, it could just be some living organism from another planet that isn't even intelligent that somehow got here from space. I don't know. In like a meteorite or whatever the fuck. And then they just want to hide it for some reason. I don't know. Do you think the moon landing is fake? No, I don't. That was something I've always said, like the cui bono argument, like who does it benefit? Who would it have benefited if the moon landing was fake? Right? Maybe NASA a little bit, they get a little more space funding, but like that's it. It didn't really do anything. The way that you could tell it's fake is if like, oh, they discovered some precious resource on the moon and everybody's paying in advance for it, and now, you know, like there'd be some benefit or some scam to do with it. There was nothing to benefit. It was just an empty planet. What kind of a hoax would that be? You say, you know, you fake the whole thing just to show it's a planet with nothing on it. Right? People aren't like that. People would come up with, oh no, there's some crazy cool thing here, and there's this precious resource, and you know, if it was fake, they would have extrapolated. Why would they just be so boring as to say, you know, oh, there's nothing here, it's just empty, right? That seems kind of to hurt the argument that it would have been fake. But yeah, everybody says, oh, Stanley Kubrick did it, or that's what 2001: A Space Odyssey. It was some extra take from there that they used for the moon landing. But no, I don't see really why it would be fake though. It didn't change anything. It didn't help anything. If they did it for a couple $1 million in space funding, then so be it. But, you know, that wouldn't be enough of an incentive to go through all that trouble. Let's see. So it's not because I don't believe it wouldn't be like, oh, nobody would fake that. How could it be fake? It's more like, you know, you wouldn't stand to gain enough from it to make it worth it. I saw a video about a guy who asked a NASA employee, and the NASA employee refused to talk about it. And I thought he might know and didn't want to talk because if it was fake, he would be in trouble. You know, I wouldn't say for sure it couldn't be fake, but I just, again, I don't see what the point of it really would be. Like, and it certainly since then, we've certainly been to the moon, you know. Other countries have been to the moon, and like, and yeah, Russia didn't even dispute it because they were having like a race, like who will get there first, Russia or the U.S. But then when the U.S. did it, Russia just accepted it. They didn't say, oh, it was fake, right? Why wouldn't they do it for political reasons? Like, we're trying to beat our rival, and our rival faked it, so, you know, we're going to do it for real. Like, I think India finally got there. How many Indians does it take to land on the moon? 1 billion plus, apparently, haha. And how much time, too? Okay, what do I do here, bro? Fucking... Like, okay, you could have, like, a pin idea. I act like, oh, I'm in a bad position. Like, I'm in a perfectly fine position. Like, you could go here. I just can't figure out sometimes what to do. Go here, then go here. Then if you didn't have the knight there, then you can't take because you're pinned down. Right? But other than that, I genuinely have no idea. Like, I don't get it. This is like an impossible move to make, just like every middle game move might seem to be, because there's nothing. True, Indians don't have that much money, and their construction has not been approved by OSHA 10. Is that so? I think their economy is definitely doing pretty good now, though. Maybe historically they didn't have the money for it, but they've grown quite a bit. Okay, let's see what we got here. Just, I can't figure anything out. So you'd have to make some weird move like, see, I don't want to mess with the double stacked pawns because like it seems like, oh, that's an advantage, but it's just not because, like, let's be annoying with the bishop then. I can't rationalize what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, but see, now this is going to turn into a liability as well. He'll attack that and somehow pin it down. So we should move the knight just to stop it from being a liability, I'd say. Because if we move the bishop, it'll lose its cover, right? But I genuinely could not explain to you what's happening here. Let's just do this, but I can't really say for sure that it's that good, and I'm kind of going against my whole instructive nature here. Now your bishop is in a better place. Is that really a better place, though? And you just made the one stupidest move that you could possibly do, which is to enable the bishop to, you know, go there now and pin it down unabated, because why? I thought the whole response to me going there, or even potentially threatening the pin, I thought you would go there to stop it, and then I'd have to go back, and then you'd have to stop it again. But instead, not only did you not do that, or not wait for me to pin it and then do it, right, you could have gone there right now, and then I couldn't have pinned it at all, or you could have waited till I'm there and then pushed it out and then pushed it out again. But you didn't do either of those things, so now I can just pin it as much as I want. So now this is a very easy move because that is a great pin to have. And again, it's not just pinned into the king, it's pinned into the king and the queen with a cover, which means that if you move that knight, you just lose the game on the spot. It's just that simple. You may as well just resign. And now my knight is stuck protecting the king. Now let's see what my rook can do. Fuck. Just all these random things. I think my position is accurate up to now, though. I was kind of messing up in some of the past games where I would miss a move or something of the sort. This has been such an exhausting stream, though. I don't know why. Like, I got so tired after like half an hour. Playing classical chess, correspondence chess is actually pretty tiring, I guess. If their economy is so good, why do they keep scamming people? Or maybe that's how their economy is growing. Who says they're scamming people? Like on some of those phone calls and stuff, but that's kind of just a stereotype. I mean, there's plenty of good industry there. Steel. Let's see. So now what you would love to do is you would love to do something where you get to actually mess around with that knight further. Because you have to realize this bishop is in a very alpha god level position. Forget about even the nature of the pin, right? You have the simple capability to do something else with it. The fact that you can't even threaten it out, right? There's nothing he can do to get rid of the bishop from there, so you can just leave it there, right? The rook can't come in to attack it. The queen can't attack it. Nobody can attack it. Now, you would think she should probably move her queen, because then how can you move the queen when you are the queen? Haha. The point is that you would want to double attack the knight, but there's no way to actually do that, right? It's completely, I don't know. For some reason, for this purpose, I hate this part of the game, even though I like it, you know, the most overall, because it's actually where you get to think and do interesting things. There's nothing I can explain. Like, there's nothing instructive about the middle game. It's like, it's just, I can't say anything. Like, I don't know what to do. Wait, when did they move their bishop there? Is that even the same spot it was in before? It's on b6. I guess it is. Somehow I didn't think of that. I guess I just assumed they would go there to try to threaten it. So you got to remember that the knight is not covered by anything, but I'm also too lazy to even move it anywhere. Okay, so there's a few ideas here. I mean, this is kind of a, you know, you go here, you try to fork it. And other than that, though, I don't know. So that incentivizes the queen to move, for example. So it turns into a useless knight move, though, because it's like, okay, you go there, she goes there, then I can't do anything. So just fuck it. Like, there's nothing you can do, right? Because if you go there, then he'll just take it. She'll just take it. Fuck. What do I work at? Or is it top secret information? No, I've said it before. I do like marketing stuff now, but in the past, I've done a number of different things that I mentioned. Let's see what we got here. Like making logos and slogans and ideas like that for people, which is kind of a good schedule because I get to do it sort of freelance now. But I always say that, and then I end up doing it more than people would do in their normal job anyway. So I can't decide what to do here. The natural move might just be to, you know, just move the knight out of the damn way. See, like, why would you do this unless it's a wishful thinking thing, right? This is like playing the player, not the position. Like, yeah, I'd love to do this, but there's no point. They're never gonna let you do it. Like, you know, it's completely just go there, then I can't go there. That's it. I'm never gonna be able to cover it. Anything. You could almost do it with the other knight, where you try to double attack it. So you go here, go here. No, wait. Why did I think that? Like, how would you attack the knight? I don't get it. I'll go here and then I'll just try to bust open this position, even if it's not really that beneficial to me. I guess I'll just do it because I can't think of anything else. I'm being extremely lazy and going against the whole spirit of what this is supposed to be about because I can't rationalize anything right now. Sometimes putting a knight on the edge of the board is okay. Like now, yeah, not like when you did it before. Remember that a few moves ago when you had your knight on a5 and it did absolutely goddamn nothing? It's been almost peaceful here lately. So she's trying to cause some trouble, I guess. What is that? D5? What did you do before, like when you did a microwave? Yeah, that was kind of similar, sort of, to what I'm doing now. just in like a different capacity, where I still had to deal with people like whatever. It would be where I'd get interrupted a lot more, or where I was doing it like more. Yeah, now I don't AFK, but now I'm not doing it while I stream. Like I just when I stream now, and when I work. So before I was kind of combining them together, and that's part of the reason why I got back into streaming was because I was like, fuck it, I'll just do it like all day long because I only have to be interrupted here and there for like a minute, so it's not like I have to do something intensive, and so it was kind of cool because I could do 12-hour streams every single day, and I would still be there for like 9 hours, and so even if I go AFK for a bit here and there, it was still worth it. Why would I AFK? Because I had to do things at unexpected times, like when it would call for it. Whenever, So now this is an interesting pawn move, because what you get to do is, if I take with the pawn, they take with the pawn, then I take with the knight, then they take with the queen. So that doesn't do anything for me at all, right? So it's almost like I wouldn't mind not doing that. I wouldn't mind not doing that, but the reason why, you never left the computer, but you did stop playing chess. No, I might have to leave it for certain reasons, too. Okay, let's see what we got here. Just bring the knight back and try to attack this, but it's still covered by the knight. So if I take it, there's no reason to do that, right? Because you take back with the pawn, unless I see some value in doing that. I really... Okay, so let me think about the potential moves. Okay, if they move the pawn up there, I just move the knight. It's not a big deal, right? You just move the knight, it's fine. If they take it, this is the only thing that's a little bit awkward. No, but if they take it, I can take it with the knight. So, and then you're double attacking. So either of those scenarios doesn't really bother me. So let's make an attacking move here where I get to double attack on the queen with the queen. The problem, oh shit, I was almost second guessing it, but the problem is that now if you put the rook behind it, right? No, it wouldn't have mattered though. I could just take, then you take, then I just move away. But maybe it wasn't as good as what I thought either. Wait, what is that? That is D6? No, C6. No, 8, obviously. What the hell am I saying? A fine move that connects your rooks. I mean, they're already connected. It just gets rid of the third wheel in the queen. But no, if they had put the rook behind, that might have made that move a little bit frivolous. Because yes, you're double attacking, but also you are putting your queen at risk. So what would I have done there? I guess I would have taken the pawn there, ergo stopping him, punishing him for moving the rook there, because now I take this and then you can't take because of the simple fact that the knight is pinned. So I guess that would answer my question, even though I didn't think of that, I'll admit, at the time. So now I can't do it. And so now if I take the knight, he takes with the pawn, and I still can't take back. She takes. And so it's kind of a pointless move. Like, most of what I'm doing is completely pointless, right? Ever had a female boss? Yeah. I've told that story, right? I used to work with my friend who was, for a while my friend, for a while my ex-girlfriend. And so I started off where I was their boss, basically. I was her boss. And then she ended up outworking me and becoming my boss over time. I mean, obviously I was with her, so I would say yes, she was hot. Yeah, that just shows you the motivation level, right? I start off, I'm her boss, and then she becomes my boss because she just is much more motivated than me. Let's see what we got. So taking the knight doesn't serve much of a purpose, right? It brings his other pawn in. Like, here's where you got to bring another extra attack. So it's arguable. Nice. I've yet to experience an encounter with a woman. I kind of doubt that. So now if you take here, so that was actually a dynamic, like, in the relationship too. Like, she made more money than me, but it was like no big deal. Like, she was very cool about it. some people would, you know, make a big thing about that, or it like goes against certain stereotypes, like, oh, the guy has to make more money. You go here to G4, and then you know, you're doing this to try to bait, like, okay, I'll bring out my knight. The problem with this is you're fucking up your pawns and making your king vulnerable, but this is the kind of time where maybe you would do that. Maybe it would be okay to do that. But I just don't know. That's the thing. You're double attacking, you just want to triple attack, and I can't figure out any way whatsoever to do that. And now I'm going to overextend myself in the process. And just they're kind of making pointless moves, just kind of going back and forth, right? All these stupid rook moves that they're doing. Like, what does that have to do with anything? So there's two pieces that are potentially uncovered that you have to keep an eye on. Both the knight here and the rook there, right? Just there could be something that happens later. The one thing you definitely don't want to do is allow that knight to get pinned, right? So if you put the rook there, for example, then you go there, then you're screwed because you can't, you know, you can't do anything. You can't cover the knight. I guess you could bring the bishop back to do it, but you don't necessarily want to do anything with that. And so what you have here is a simple ability to, God damn it. If I take the pawn there, right? Take the pawn from E to D5. Then they take back, but they have to take back only with the queen. No, they could take with the pawn. Oh, I guess I could just win the pawn now. So why did that change now from before? I guess because the queen wasn't there before. So now if you simply look at it, you just have to have the willingness to look. Now we actually finally win something. You take, then I take, then if you take, then I still take, and then you can't take. So that should be a fairly simple line in before I somehow blunder my queen because of it, but I don't think that's possible. You take with the pawn, so we go ahead, we take there. Is this, I have the board kind of backwards, so it's a little bit confusing. You take there, right, with the cover of the queen as well. It's been a while since we captured anything. So that's actually a pretty good move. And the reason why is because not only are you attacking the queen, but you're also attacking this pawn. And the reason why you're attacking this pawn is because it's not covered. Not one of the two pieces I just pointed to, actually. So not only is the rook and the knight not covered, but that pawn there also is not covered. So that does raise some interesting questions that I didn't really think about that move. You might just have to accept the fact that you don't win the pawn, and then you basically just, or you could make like a ballsy move and say, okay, I'm going to go to E4 with the queen, and then say, fuck it. And then, no, but there's no reason to do that when you're giving up your whole anchor pawn here too. So that's kind of a tricky move. There's no question about it, where I could take the knight and just give a check now. Doesn't really seem to have much to do with anything else though, so there's no reason to worry about it. So the problem is it'll let them take back with the pawn if I do this. But again, if I go here with the queen, for example, right? I didn't even transpose this move, did I? So they just ignored it and they went here and they attacked the queen, which is sometimes a good way to escape from certain threats. Like whatever I'm doing gets thrown out the window because you get to, you know, you get to just have to deal with the queen threat. Either a check or an attack on the queen can sometimes work in an escape artistry sort of way. Yeah, you could go here with the queen, but then you would take there with the knight, and then I would take there with the queen, and it just doesn't matter as much as maybe I'm making it out to do. Right, and so what you get to do now is you get to basically go back probably to D1. This is similar to a position you see sometimes where they're threatening like a fork. They're threatening the queen and a fork. So the queen has to go back to cover the fork on a pawn like that. So it's a similar sort of structure. Favorite song? I actually don't know that I have one anymore. Like I would have said maybe something instrumental. I don't even know. I really can't pick one. I could do maybe, okay, favorite song from a game, favorite song from a movie, favorite song from a artist. You're trying icebreakers. What is that, like a gum or something? Maybe hemorrhage in my hands. I like that song a lot, but I forget who's singing that. Let love bleed out in my hands, something like that is the one of the core lines. Yeah, who actually sings that song? In my hands. Yeah, by Fuel. This is a really good song. But no, I tend to like instrumental stuff more than anything. Yeah, let's see, where did it rank on the top charts or anything? September 2000. I don't know. I didn't even know what band sung it though, so it's not like I would say, "Oh, I'm a fan of the band" or anything. Man, this is kind of annoying sometimes. But what you should be grateful for is now you can bring the knight. As a result of this position, you can bring your knight now to here to finally double attack it in some other way. The only thing then that you're missing in that process is the simple fact that you're not able to actually have the queen there. But then I would take, he would take, and then I would still need like another cover there. And so it doesn't entirely work. Damn it, why is this so annoying? So the only logical thing to do is just move the queen back. There shouldn't be any other meaningful threats that he can pose. Right, just move the queen back and cover that. So that is an adequately annoying knight move though, for sure. How are they, the icebreakers? Or are you saying it like... I'm thinking like the product. He's doing icebreakers like in conversation to break the ice, but we already know each other pretty well, I think. I thought he was talking about whatever. There's like some gum or something like that, right? What is an icebreaker? It's like some kind of candy, isn't it? Gum and mint, yeah. Okay, so you move the queen up to there, which is where you go to D6, I think. D6. I had a different move in mind. Thanks for playing with me. It's always fun to play chess with a friend. You're saying that like that's some finality. Like, oh, thanks for playing with me, as if I win. That's like a way to say GG. Fuck. Maybe she knows something I don't. Now my rooks can see each other. Yeah, the queen, the evil queen was keeping them apart. I don't think you know anything about me besides where you live. That you like to play chess, that you like... You worked at like a fast food place, at least you were saying. Maybe certain things like that. You're a console gamer, apparently. Yeah, what's worse, playing chess or being a console gamer? That's the tough one now. Which, of course, I have been both, but I'm just saying. Fuck, which one would I rather make more fun of? Yeah, now you get to not only attack. This is a pretty obvious move. You get to not only double attack that, but you also get to do it in such a way. But see, now here's where you tunnel vision on your own threats without thinking about the implications of anything else. Like, but no, you're attacking the queen and you're double attacking that. The double attack, unfortunately, doesn't do that much, though. And the reason why is because you can't actually take anything else. Right, but it still seems like a good solid move. But again, this is like more how we just normally play a game. It's not actually a good instructive style at all. So that knight has been pinned for like the whole goddamn game. You do a good job of attacking and creating threats. Let's develop my rook. You go to here, that still doesn't affect the position. That bishop has been in such a beautiful spot that there was nothing that could ever push it out. Like, look how annoying that is. This is like an octopus bishop over here. Just, the rook could never attack it. Nothing can ever attack it. Even now, if you move the pawn, it doesn't change anything. Like, that's a very good thing to kind of just keep going there. He stopped working at fast food place 2 years ago. Oh, I thought you just mentioned it not too long ago. I thought he said something about it. We barely known each other for that long. So it must have just been at the beginning that he talked about it. Maybe he was just telling a story about something that happened when he was. That's one thing. As much as I've eaten fast food, I've never worked at a fast food place. I wouldn't like working at a food place. I'm just, first of all, I can't even cook, but I guess it is fast food technically. I wouldn't even be able to cook fast food. That's how shitty of a cook I am. I can microwave it. That's about the extent, which sometimes that is what places actually just do. That's the extent of their cooking even, but let's see what we got here. Just the same old shit. Or now we can do the threat from before. See, this is one of those moments. I talked about this threat before. If you tried to move the rook somewhere earlier, she tried to move the rook to cover the knight, let's say, then what did that open up? Or because my queen was there, like, oh no, they can put the rook behind the knight, so then it covers the knight if the queen's attacking, like from, the queen was attacking from f3. But what threat did that open up? It opens up the threat to be able to take the pawn on h5 with the queen. Now that could be still like a bait player, that could be something that's not really that good, especially considering the fact, wait, but you're just hanging your queen. What the fuck? They play so inconsistently, bro. But hypothetically, okay, you could take on, what the fuck? You could take on here potentially because you're still pinning the knight, but that would lead to this potential problem, so you shouldn't do it. And so therefore, obviously you're just going to take the queen. But see how I'm tunnel visioning on something else because I'm not expecting, I'm giving even an 800 rated bot. You can microwave? I wish I had such talent. Indeed. Or I've cooked stuff in the oven before, which I guess that takes real talent too. Just, it's at least a little bit more complicated. And then you end up dropping pieces of food at the bottom of the oven and then you're too lazy to clean it out. And so then eventually you keep burning that and it'll eventually start a fire because you just have all this grease and food backed up on the bottom of the oven and you never clean it. And like years of using it, I would make like those frozen micro oven pizzas or whatever. I mean, to be fair, that's kind of my diet as a kid too. Like my parents didn't really cook either. And so it's kind of like a bad habit maybe that they gave me, that like they would make that kind of same shit for me. Either it's something frozen that you're microwaving or using the oven, or it's something that's a smoke, what you described. Like either that or again, fast food or something like that. So just aside from this, like let's consider, would you take the pawn and give up the pawn here, the c2 pawn that's your anchor pawn? I doubt I would do that. And so we've left this, this is what's frustrating about it. Like if this opponent was a little better, right? No offense to them, but this bishop has been attacking that for like an hour and there's nothing I can still do about it. So if they didn't just blunder their queen, like I'm sitting on that threat trying to materialize something from it, but it just never happens. Like I don't get it. How would I still do it now? I don't even know. Like it's so much more difficult than you would think. Right now you have to be careful not to move this pawn because that might give them some sort of unleash play. So either like, you know, you could unleash, attack the queen and then you're giving a check with the bishop. And so basically either move the king or simply decide to basically like just don't move that pawn. So you could have gone here and then you could have pushed the knight out, which actually the knight's almost goddamn trapped, right? You can only go here, but also that allows you to take there. Right, so that would be some theoretical other line that you could do if you decide to, you know, if the queen wasn't blundered. I'm just trying to give it a little more credit than what it deserves because this, I honestly didn't see that at first though. You see my weakness. In a rapid game, I might have missed that, or I would have missed that because it takes me several minutes of thinking about it. Why? Because I don't expect that they would make that move, so I don't even consider it. In fact, I don't know. I don't get it. Oh no, my queen, but actually, that's kind of like how I would say it. Who started that, I wonder? Because I always used to say that, and like, there's like two things that I used to say that other people sort of feel like they've hijacked. Not that they even know who I am, because I was just a random clown, but I would always say cheeky threats, right, before Frank is here or whoever said it. just he says the word cheeky a lot while playing chess. But I would always say that, like a cheeky threat on the queen or a cheeky threat on the cheeky check. Like I'm just doing it just to annoy you, even though I know it's not good. I'm just doing it just to do it, right? Just because I don't know what else to do. So I'll just keep spam checking and doing stuff like that. And then the other side of it is the whole "oh no, my queen" sort of joke. I always would do that anyway. Oh no, I blundered this piece because I thought I was doing something clever, but then I actually wasn't. So I would do it more in a literal sense. I would think I'm playing them, but I'm actually playing myself. But yeah, I don't know who actually started that in this whole modern era of that's a smoker, what I described. Eric Rosen started that meme, I guess. But no, I mean, some of these things I genuinely did without ever having heard about them, because this was in a time where, I mean, I guess they're natural things that you would, make fun of while playing chess, but still. It's interesting how, if somebody heard me do that now in the mainstream, they'd be like, oh, you must watch Frank. You must be a Frank fan. No, I am fucking Frank, dude. I was Frank before Frank was Frank. So we take the thing, we take the pawn with the queen, but then he takes the pawn with the knight. And he's double attacking the thing. We take the pawn. We take the pawn with the knight. No, we don't want to do that though. I don't know. Like we won the queen, so I mean it should be over. Thanks for at least speeding that up. This is an 800 rated bot, by the way. Even the 400 didn't blunder their queen necessarily like this, right? Danny Rensch, the ultimate Smurf. Even the bots on the site are encouraging smurfing. So we go to there, and then if you take, then I take, then you take, then I still take. So that might be the only logical thing to do here, because everything else is just pointless. I don't know. So that knight is still pinned till the end of time. I guess we'll just do this. There's no like sneaky play you can make if you take there. I take, but then you take, but then I still take. So there's nothing really to it. There could be maybe some annoying bishop move that you make here just for the sake of pushing out the thing. What? Protecting your pawn. I had to block your attack on my pawn. So you give a check and blunder the knight. What do you mean? I have to block your attack on my pawn. What pawn? What are you even talking about? Oh, like the... I mean, wouldn't you have been better off just on a serious level, like just going like that? You could just cover the pawn rather than simply... Like, they played pretty well at the beginning, and then you just completely clowned it up. I don't get it. So you go to here, and then you just simply take it. That's fine. Almost making it a little bit too easy here, but it's okay. Because then at that point, it's not instructive either. You can take that, but I'll be back. I got my pawn covered. The only way you'll be back is if you beat me, and then I come back to do this challenge again in like a year after having failed it, right? Or unless I lose to somebody else. Otherwise, you have no chance of ever being back. What would you do if you won the lottery? Probably buy some property, buy a couple businesses so they could, make me more money in the long term, and then figure out what I want to do. Make a movie. Once I save up enough money. I've always wanted to make a movie. Not that money should be the defining factor in that, but it makes it easier. Let money compensate for your lack of talent, as I always say. What else do we got here? Just do something like... See, we're still going to leave that pin till the end of time. So the pawn is adequately covered. This is fine. We can just take here just because nothing else is happening. That pawn move doesn't have any impact on the game, really, to the extent that... But, oh yeah, now you wise up. She's sniping my stream. You wise up to the fact that... You wise up to the fact that you're able to actually... what do you call it? You could have just covered that instead of sacking the knight, but you go ahead and move the rook to the h8, and your pawn now is a pass pawn, as none of my pawns can ever stop it. Yes, we know what a pass pawn is, dude. I would do a bunch of hookers. Yeah, that's the one meme, right? Hookers and cocaine. I mean, hey, you can always do those things as an extra, but I think the smartest thing to do is, yeah, just buy some property rather than keeping your money in the bank or just spending it, because then when you buy property, you can always resell it and it's going to potentially go up in value, or it shouldn't go down too much. So that's kind of a more solid liquid thing. You can buy stocks, you can buy gold, you can buy, businesses and let them just run themselves and make the money and, whatever it is. But property is like a safe one for lazy people, because just buy a rental thing and just rent it to people, and you don't have to be there and you don't have to do any work, and you just keep making more money back on your investment. The worst thing you can do is like buy a bunch of cars and fancy houses though for yourself. Like athletes almost do that. Professional athletes, they'll buy like a bunch of houses and then they won't be able to afford taxes on them and bills and stuff associated with them, right? Because then their career's over, or they're like a one season wonder, and then they run out of money, so they buy too many things and now they have to pay for them, basically pay the upkeep, pay the taxes and stuff on them. So they overestimate, like, in other words, let's say I'm an 18-year-old and I'm going to the NBA and I'm going to make 20 million a year. So I buy a house where the taxes a year are 10 million, but then in 5 years I wash out, or in 10 years I retire, and now I can't afford that 10 million because I could afford it throughout my career. So I'm acting like, oh, that's no big deal. I make 20, I can easily afford 10. Or whatever. It shouldn't be that much anyway, but I'm just saying. But my lifestyle is 10 million a year, let's say, and I make 20, but then at some point you're going to stop making the 20. So it's just not they don't think about it long term like that. And your pawn now, like, who's the biggest streamer example of that? Somebody who is rich and kind of blew all their money and like had a fall from grace like that. Which streamer who went bankrupt? Streamer loses 150 million in seconds, really. Puppers. Oh, well, that's just showing like he died. Aspen Gold is going to go bankrupt. Whatever, I'm sure there's stories like that in every area where people, obviously overestimate things or take them for granted or whatever. Okay, can we just finish this game now? But they made it a lot easier. I thought it might take all night because this is a slow, instructive pace. But in the middle game, I just completely didn't even pretend to try. Like, I'm just doing whatever. So the pawn's adequately covered on c2. Everything's adequately covered. You just got to watch out for this dark for bishop. Could do something sneaky, right, if I feel tempted to move that. And so now you can double attack the knight, but the problem with it is the simple fact that you could bring the rook behind, and now I can no longer punish it by taking the pawn. I guess I could take the other pawn here and give a check to the king. So this f3 spot is still a legitimate and good one to do, for the simple fact that either you're double attacking, he has to cover it. The only thing you can cover it with is the rook. Then if you cover it with the rook, then I take the pawn. Right, so this should be pretty much a forced sequence of moves here that you can do. You got me, nice fork. Is that even considered a fork? Like, you're forking with the queen, I guess? My knight needs more, so I wouldn't have called it that, really. But okay, wait, something's wrong with my position too. This pawn was gone at some point, and I forgot to move it, right? So we got b7 and a6, and so now you can take this and give it a check. It's pretty straightforward. You go to here, and then you take on to here. This sort of experience would be valuable to show somebody who's like, oh, you're stuck at 1,000 rating and you're not good. It's like, look at what I'm doing. Like, anybody on the planet Earth can do what I'm doing right now. And it's only because you're taking your time. You don't need to know anything. You don't need to be super smart. You don't need nothing. Nothing. You just do what you can do. And actually, you're going to end up actually winning the bishop as well. Just because I don't think you can really do anything with that. Ouch, you forked my pieces. Now you take a pawn, but you lose the bishop. You finally escaped from that pin, though. How does that make you feel? It's easier for me to focus when my knight isn't pinned. Fuck. Yeah, that's your excuse. That's why you blundered your queen, which had nothing to do with it. So the king goes up and takes the pawn. If the king doesn't lead, how can he expect his subordinates to follow? A wise man once said. So now you can go ahead and just take the bishop. I don't see any problem with that. Right, there's no imminent threat that they're posing whatsoever. Now you go ahead and you take that. Let's see what kind of sick ending we might have to this game. But there was actually a pretty sick ending to the other one that I showed kind of at the beginning there. Fireworks. Fuck. I'll gobble up as many pawns as you give me. But I didn't give you anything. I just... You know, there's actually... Oh, there's a mate in X number of moves if you just ignore that kind of thing. But see, like, does it really matter when you're up by this much? So at that point, it sort of ceases to be instructive because you get to... You know, you go there. We don't even have to show it. Just go here. I love that you're saying in a snarky way, oh, whatever you give me, I'll take it, but you're not giving me anything. You finally move that stupid knight. Now let's still try to take it seriously and play it instructive, because this is what happens at a higher level of chess too, is like, you'll end up doing it in such a way that, you know, you'll be up by a little bit against a good opponent, like your 2000 rated versus a 2000 rated player. What am I threatening to do? I have no idea, dude. Yeah, like you, the same thing that you didn't know what it was either, where you just let me take the queen. What was I threatening to do there? But no, you'll be up by a little bit, or you'll be up by a good amount, but then you have to stay the course over a long, tedious game and not just completely fall apart when it comes to, not completely fall apart, because then it's like, oh, you'll get bored or you'll get tired of it. Or like, you know you're going to win, but you actually still have to do it, right? You can't just take it for granted. Now, this is a bit of a bait. Oh no, she blundered her pawn. But actually, if you do that, you get forked. So let's still try to play at a high level, even at this stage of the game. And so the way that you would do that is you could basically try to see, like, how am I going to potentially mate you? And the answer is I have no idea, actually. Like, I don't even see a really good spot for the queen to go. The only way I'd really make a mistake or potentially lose in these games is a misclick, which I did actually misclick at the end of the Danny Rensch thing. So I didn't actually get to do the cool checkmate that I showed, which technically wasn't a checkmate, as he could still move the pawn and dance around, but at least it looked cool. But I actually misclicked and then ended up doing something else, but we were up by so much that it obviously didn't matter. So you can't go to a lot of these key squares that you would think you would like to go to, right? And so therefore, you know, you could go like here, I guess, but you'd be double stacked, or you could, it's hard to really say. Like, most of the squares you'd want to go to, you can't even do. Let's just go here, and then, but then we'll also get forked, but I won't. Wait. No, I will. This is actually kind of a little tricky move, just because there's almost nothing I can do with that. You can't take the pawn or you get forked. You can't go there or you get forked. All right, so pretend this move was actually high value and high consequence, where you can't just accept, you know, again, you can afford to lose anything you want, and it might even be beneficial. So let's go to like here, just to kind of get the queen out of the way a little bit. I can't really figure out anything too much better, but you know what? Maybe this deserves a bit more calculation. Like, what would be the most efficient way to try to mate you right now, right? Instead of doing all this dinky stuff, we should go to a more aggressive position, right? This is a very passive move. So why don't we instead go here? Go back to here. If you go there, you can go here, you can go there, right? Would be the two moves. And the reason why is because you're potentially posing a threat, a mate there, whatever, even though it's not, because you obviously have the knight attacking. But at least in theory, you are posing some good attacks with that. So let's actually go queen to... Let's try to process of elimination this as well. Between those two squares, which one is better? Going to... either going to b7 or a7. That's kind of a tough question to answer, because both of them allow you to attack, potentially on double attack onto e7, you know, potentially mating. So all we'd have to do is displace the knight, which I'm not going to be able to do necessarily very easily anyway. I can create a double stack on the c file with the 2 rooks. So the big question becomes, again, which one is better? The dark square diagonal potentially, or the light square diagonal? I would be attacking the knight, right, with the queen, but only if the king gets to move, which I don't see really how we're going to get it to move. I think probably... I honestly can't tell. I really couldn't tell you which one's better. That's almost an impossible thing to figure out. Again, in a very low consequence sort of position where it doesn't even really matter. But what would be the follow-up plays, basically? Let's think about it. You would have the ability to basically... From a7, you would have the darks for diagonal, which doesn't have that much significance. From b7, you would have the ability to take the knight if he moves the king, but there's no way I can get the king to actually move. And so you gotta think, like, what would they do? They might bring the rook up to like f7. If they bring the rook up to f7, you would have a scenario where you basically get to, from either of these squares, they're on f7, you get to potentially check from here, right? So at least that gives you another option. So that's the reason why I guess I'll rationalize this particular move. Oh, but I didn't even do their move before. Okay, b7 over there. Now you just simply blunder your rook. I mean, this is the difference in our approaches that I approve of that move. That's a fun, active way of avoiding the threat. Now, can I just mate you without even having to worry about this? If I give a check on the light square, where do you go? You go to the dark square. Right, so I give a check on c8. Then they only have 1 square to go to. Or no, they have the light square, the light square. Then if I give another check, like, you got to somehow do it in such a way that now incorporating the rook, right, you might be able to finish this off before you even worry about that. So you go here, right? I'll try not to use the arrows, but you go here, then their only options of moves are e7 and e7, which pins the rook, obviously, and then obviously f7, right? Those are the only 2 things. You can't block it with the knight. You have to go to e7 or f7 only, right? Everywhere else is not available to you. No, I guess you can go under, though. See, this is where my premise is wrong. You can go underneath the rook and go, no, you can't because it's still a light square diagonal. Never mind. So you have e7 and f7. Either way, I could bring in the rook to give a check, but then you still have your stupid ass knight, so I can't technically do that. So e7 or f7, I can give another check with the queen. So if I come in a little closer, I would go to like d7. So then d7 giving a check, but I wouldn't be able to give the check if you came to e7. Then I can't give that check. I'd have to back off and do it again from like where I am now. And so again, you could easily just take the rook, but if there was some better attack here, let's see at least potentially what that could be. You give a check, then you go to one of those 2 squares. Then if you, again, the better one to go to is e7, because if you go to f7, then I can give the check like on d7, right, and maybe keep pushing you off to that side of the board, right, and then see what happens. But the thing is that if you go to e7, you go to e7 after I give the check here on the light square, then what happens? I can't give another check on the light square. I have to go back to where I already was. So it doesn't really seem to do anything. Like, so I don't see any other attacking ideas here. You could bring in the rook to try to do something. But again, why the hell wouldn't you just take the take the rook is the point. But let's try to see what the rook move would do. We would bring the rook into like bring the rook into maybe c6, and then whatever you do, I can give the check on the light square. I don't know. There's really nothing. Just take the stupid ass. Take the stupid thing. Yeah, it's sometimes no fun when they're making mistakes like this, but we'll have plenty of better bots to go against in the time. But she played pretty well for a while, though. That's what I don't get. Good move. Your bishop can see so many squares. Now you take, I take. What do you mean my bishop can see so many squares? The only thing the bishop gets to see is its own demise here. Right? She's saying that reacting to, you can see so many squares in its last moment before I take it. But it was a good trade, obviously, there regardless. So now here, with what's left, these are even still the positions that, you know, when I'm in, like, pretend I'm low on time, right? I'm plus 20, but I have like 1 second left. How would I come up with this crazy mating sequence in that amount of time, right? And that's actually something I genuinely struggle with. So that's at least a legitimate thing to think about. Like, should I be trying to basically do this or not when it comes to trying to mate? Like, okay, I'll give a check from the c7, then I will, you know, he could block with the knight, then I could attack it with the rook. There should be like a simple mate in like 3 or something here, but there won't be. You know, you give the check there, you can either block with the knight, or you can, then I could give another check after there, even if you block. If you don't block, you have to go up, and if you go up, it's kind of back to square one with what we were talking about, but at least then we can bring the rook. So I think this is probably a sound move, but again, still lacking the core amount of confidence and effort that I would normally put in. I have to say, win or lose, it's just fun to be here playing a game with you. Yeah, that's like the 3rd time you said that. Time to shield my knight from your queen. So now at this stage, all you get to do is you could give another check, but it wouldn't be mate. It still wouldn't be mate because you can go to like a dark square. So if I give a check on g8, right, the only square you can go to, now you can go to like you can go either to f5, or you can go to, but if that was the only square you could go to, then I could like still push the pawn, and then even if you take, I take, and then it's covered by the knight. So technically, if that was the only option, but then you can keep going down even further, and then I can give another check like with this one, or there wouldn't be one there then though. I can give a check with the queen from behind, right? Give a check from the, or actually I can't. So what other option do we have? We have the option of e8. If I give a check on e8, the only thing you're missing is the dark square, but I have no other piece that can actually do this. e8. Right, you're giving a check right in his face. That would at least allow me to take the knight, so that is at least a legitimate thing to think about. So you give a check there, you go to e, whatever that is. Right, you would have to go, either you could go to d5 or f5. Again, I'm trying not to play it like, oh, I'm just trying to do the best, or just trying to win. Or wait a second, this moved to there. What is that, f7? No, it's d7. d7 to block, then we go to here. Wait. What? Oh, my knight is long gone, though. I'm so confused, actually. I don't even know what I did. But anyway, this moves to here, this moves to here. And then what happens? My king senses the end, but I can't quite show what that end is going to be because it's just stupid. You could easily just take the knight. Is there some other mate? There really isn't anything, though. Like, what could you possibly do? Defending my pawn, like, that's really the priority. You can go like this, maybe, and then if he takes, then at least I can bring in the knight. If not, I can just do it myself, I guess. I don't know. I'll just take the knight. So this goes to the dark square. That is f6. Then you take. And then at that point, you're able to again, I'm trying to still look for like the best mate. You have an overwhelming advantage, nice work, but I'm still not satisfied because I'm not seeing still like the super clean attacking options. Two pawns facing each other in the trenches. She sounds like a role player like me. So what can we do here now? Is there not a simple mating pattern in the works? And there's really just not. If I give a check from, there's only like one check you can really give, right? If I give a check from D7, D8, you can go anywhere basically that you want. So it's still not that simple. Why is it so hard to count? I guess because, again, your effort is really low because it's like you've already won, so why do you have to think so hard? But you got to get used to doing that. Like, you're not going to see these positions exactly, but I could just take the pawn, give a check. I don't know. Where is my... He has a pawn on D6, but it's not even here. I don't know what the hell is going on with this position. So we would take this here. You're on the path to winning the game. Okay, now it's easy because you can just bring the rook up and just do it like that, right? My king must move out of the check. So now you go to here, and then you just go all the way to edge of the board. Checkmate is coming, good for you. You go to here. I don't know how we misplaced that pawn though. So then you go to there. What is that? I like to get these last positions as accurate as possible. That's E8, and then you mate on D8. Right, like that. What? Fuck. Oh no, my queen. A brave attempt, but I'll take that. Your queen is undefended. Okay, the point is, what could I have actually done there? Is there not fucking... Is there not another... God damn it. I don't know why I thought that would be covered. You could have just gone to... Wait, maybe you couldn't have, though. Because if the queen's on there... Oh my fucking god. If the queen is on... Well, good thing I had that big of an advantage. But if you didn't, then you wouldn't be playing like this aggressively anyway. So both of these, I'm just doing it to troll. I'm just doing it for the laughs and to milk this even more. But no, it's like... My queen was on what square? Like, how did I... It was on D6, right? So how... I technically wouldn't have been able to mate because... In one move at least, right? Because if I move up to like D7, then you still have the dark square. So I could have done that and then moved it. Or... I'm just trying to think if there's a mate in one there. Like, the queen can't go anywhere to the back rank because if you go to F8, they're still covering because of the king. If you try to take the pawn on G6 and check, it's still not mate. So it would have taken two moves. You can just go to like D7 and then they go back and then you can do it. You can go to like C8 or whatever, right? Because then wherever they go, they're going to get mated. So now I'm not even going to bother transposing. Let's just do it. No, I don't care. Just don't get a stalemate. And technically, I could get a stalemate. Or oh shit, I'm not even reading her thing now. Your rook takes the open file. It's safe enough to bring my king out. I think so. Can't argue with that one, dude. You are giving that piece of work out. Go ahead, finally do something with the goddamn knight. What am I up to? What could I be up to? You revealed an attack on my pawn. Just let you take the knight too. I don't even want it. Your passed pawn is one step closer to ruining my day. You're playing a strong game. I'm just doing this to inflate my accuracy, by the way. I should resign, but I won't. Teaching kind of a bad lesson to us. I will not resign. I will go down with the ship. You should be able to just do this the whole way. You can win now. You're almost there. My king dances out of the way. Okay. I'm not even reading what you're saying. Overwhelming advantage. Go to here. You're on the path to winning the game. My king dances out of the way. Okay, I don't know why I keep doing that at the end just to troll. Like where I'm able to... I obviously just wasn't paying attention, but it is kind of frustrating even on the level Bravo that's mate. Yeah, you don't get to say that's mate. The winner gets to say that's mate, dude. Or that's what people would do in chess tournaments, that they would have like a smug smile, like, oh, haha, that's made, good game. Like, there's a certain snarkiness and whatever stupidity that goes along with it, where everything is so egotistical, dude. Like, you're not smart. You just studied a fucking board games for years. And that's exactly what I would say too. Or even though I haven't studied, I even still clown myself that, oh, you know, I've played it for that long. Okay, so that was the third bot that we've beaten. Or no, wait. That's the fourth bot we've beaten in 5 episodes, because obviously Danny Rensch, we did for 2 of them just because one of them was short. And so let's just confirm whether that chick is a real thing. Coach Mae, real person, chess.com. I don't think she is, though. She's a liar, apparently. Beautiful Coach Mae, animated. How accurate is the chess coach? How do I make a coach happy? Online or real life coaches? Okay, see you tomorrow.